From 13 ABC, this is a breaking news special report.
And we do interrupt regular programming to bring you this sad news this afternoon. It is confirmed from the city of Toledo in a press release released just moments ago that Mayor Mike Collins has passed away this afternoon. I'm going to read you the press release sent to us by the city of Toledo. It is with great sadness that we announce that Mayor D. Michael Collins passed away today, February 6, 2015. His loss leaving a void in our lives that will never be filled. City of Toledo mourning its mayor, as well as expressing deep sympathy for the family and the close friends of Mayor Collins. City going on to say he died doing what he loved, serving the citizens of Toledo and being mayor to this great city. His ambitions were far-reaching. He never believed he had to leave Toledo to achieve them. He was a man devoted to his family, his friends, his staff, and community. In case you're just joining us, Mayor D. Michael Collins has passed away this afternoon following that cardiac arrest last Sunday afternoon as he was driving home from a 911 news conference, or the news conference at the 911 center, suffering that cardiac arrest, getting into that car accident with his SUV, miraculously saved for the time being by those two great Samaritans who stopped administering CPR, but confirmation within the last 10 minutes from the city of Toledo that Mayor Mike Collins has passed away. And over the next couple of minutes, we'll continue to bring you the sights and the sounds of who this man was. Once again, Mayor Collins at that news conference involving road conditions during that storm last Sunday. He was there with Sheriff John Tharp at noon at the 911 call center. Afterwards, we know he went to a grocery store, went to Costco. After that, authorities say he did suffer cardiac arrest, crashing his black SUV near Hill and Parkside. Evelyn Johnson, we know her story by now, called 911. She and Andre Crisp followed instructions from the dispatcher, an incredibly calm dispatcher, during a 911 call that lasted only about 7 minutes. They used a hammer to break the window and then performed CPR to get the mayor breathing once again. Collins arrived at UTMC at 2:22 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. And once again, getting word within the last 10 minutes that he passed away at UTMC, despite the heroic efforts of the doctors there to save him this past week. Mayor Collins remembered. Take a look.
D. Michael Collins spent his life in service of his hometown. He walked a beat for 27 years as a Toledo police officer, then was elected by his brothers to serve 10 years as president of the Police Patrolmen's Association. While on the force, he earned his bachelor's degree from UT and then an MBA from UT. He handled several collegiate-level teaching assignments at the University of Toledo, but his call to public service was strong, and in 2007, he ran for city council as a political independent. He won that seat on Toledo City Council, representing South Toledo in District 2. Collins was known as a busy and dedicated councilman, often at odds with both Mayor Carty Finkbeiner and then Mayor Mike Bell. He even frequently debated issues with fellow council members concerning budgets and government oversight. But when he saw a chance to defeat Mike Bell, who was running for re-election in 2013, Collins decided to take him on, again as an independent, but with a massive amount of support from unions all across the city.
D. Michael Collins.
In November of 2013, he beat Mayor Mike Bell handily. Then in January, he began what turned out to be a very tumultuous first year as mayor.
As our community mourns the loss of these two fine professionals, they deserve, and rightfully so, the title of heroes.
Which began 3 weeks in with the deaths of 2 firefighters and then the worst winter weather in our city's history. But perhaps the biggest event during his short tenure as mayor was his handling of the water crisis that first weekend in August of 2014.
We're erring on the side of caution.
500,000 people were told they could not drink the water, and the mayor was the point man for his city. He met with federal and state local officials, organized water distribution lines, made sure samples of Toledo's water were tested for safety.
I'm pretty thirsty right now because it's been a long night.
It was a long 3 days for our city and for the mayor, but Mayor D. Michael Collins was in command, soliciting help from the governor and urging federal lawmakers to solve the issue of water quality in the Great Lakes. February 1st, he was out surveying the streets of his hometown as another big snowstorm crippled the city. D. Michael Collins was a dedicated policeman, educator, council member, and mayor, and he died at the age of 70.
And with that, our thoughts and certainly our prayers are going out to wife Sandy, the three daughters who were by his side all this week, and the rest of the Collins family, as well as the city of Toledo and the people who worked with Mayor Mike Collins for the last year and month or so. In case you're just joining us, after going into cardiac arrest last Sunday, word this afternoon within the last 20 minutes that Mayor Mike Collins, D. Michael Collins, has passed away at the age of 70. As Bill pointed out, he had a distinguished career of public service right here in his hometown, and it lasted some 27 years, starting with that 27-year career with the Toledo Police Department. He was on the beat for many of those years, but also elected by his brothers on the force to serve as president of their police officers union. Back in 2008, he began his 6 years representing District 2 on Toledo City Council, a fierce fighter for South Toledo. And then in 2013, he was elected mayor. The grassroots campaigning, Collins Cares. He was an underdog, there's no question about it, but steadfast in his campaign and began his term in January of 2014. So far, or I should say that Mayor Mike Collins served some 13 months before that terrible car accident last Sunday during that snowstorm. D. Michael Collins lived a life of service and family now. We want to take a look at his story through pictures. Here's Diane Larson.
Frankly, if we go regionalization, I would hope that they look at what's going to be the increase in all rates.
D. Michael Collins may have been many things professionally: Marine, police officer, city councilman, and mayor. But in smaller, perhaps more meaningful moments, he was a husband, a father, and a grandfather to 8. His Facebook page is filled with those moments, and if pictures tell the truth, these were happy times for him. Collins was the father of 3 grown daughters from his first marriage. 2 of them live in San Diego, which is where he and his wife Sandy spent this past Thanksgiving. He married Sandy Drabick in July 2005. She's a respected attorney with a long list of professional accomplishments, including vice president and general counsel for the University of Toledo before her retirement in 2007. They took many pictures of their travels to Ireland, to Disneyland, to Mobile, Alabama just last month to watch his team, the Toledo Rockets, win the GoDaddy Bowl game. He may have been the leader of Ohio's 4th largest city, but somebody had to mow his lawn, which his wife documented over and over and over again. And he was a dog guy. Here they are with their dog Chloe at the September opening of Toledo's new dog park. He was a loyal and enthusiastic supporter of his alma mater, sporting Rockets garb in picture after picture. Pictures that show a smiling politician visiting Toledo's farmers market, overseeing ribbon-cutting ceremonies, honoring his time as a Marine, and it would seem loving every minute of it. He was proud of his Irish roots, too, talked about it often, and returned to his homeland a number of times. And after his cardiac arrest, many supporters remembered that in prayer and in the Irish blessing, which ends with the line, "And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand."
And now we are going to be joined on the phone by a longtime colleague of Mike Collins, Rob Ludeman, also of South Toledo, joining us, another fellow councilman who served with Mike Collins. Rob, can you hear me right now?
I can hear you, Lee. Yes. What a sad day for Mike's family and for all the citizens of Toledo and Northwest Ohio. Very unexpected.
We talked about, or I mentioned briefly, that he was a fierce fighter for South Toledo, but a fierce fighter for Toledo, I should say, for the entire city. But you are brothers in arms, both South Toledoans, correct? And I mean that near and dear to his heart.
Well, when I was term limited as the District 2 council person, Mike, of course, took over, and we met a number of times to brief each other on what projects I had going on and what his visions were, and we worked very hard together. I think when I came back for not just all of Toledo, but the South End, it's a special place,
Right.
and Mike knew that.
You had your moments, I'm sure, where there were many differences. There's no question that Mike Collins liked to stir it up, did his homework, right, Rob?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. But my wife and I don't agree on everything at home either.
Right,
So
right.
We always shook hands at the end of the day and said, "Let's go on to the next issue."
Right. Your thoughts as we've watched the events unfold this week, the heroic efforts of those two good Samaritans, the doctors at UTMC, and the family by his side today. Your thoughts as there was some feeling we might be meeting this day and soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that this would be the conclusion. If there's anything positive, I think, to take out of it is the awareness that the public now has of CPR, trying to get people to learn how to do it, the classes, and I salute the two Good Samaritans who jumped right in and helped out as best they could. So, but Mike will be missed, a really good guy, and my thoughts and prayers go out to his family.
I'll let you go here, Rob, but lastly, what will you remember most about Mike Collins?
I think just the fact that you said earlier, a fierce fighter for his projects, and I look at Southwick, and when Southwick finally is developed, we'll think about Mike and how he fought hard to get things done there.
So wanted Southwick to be resurrected.
Yep.
No question. Rob Ludeman, thank you. Thank you. Our thoughts with everybody on council as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. You take care.
All right. Mike Collins losing his battle after that cardiac arrest, losing his battle this afternoon. We're getting word from the city of Toledo and through UTMC within the last 25 minutes or so that he passed away this afternoon. County Commissioner Pete Gerken, also a former councilman, joining us right now. Pete, can you hear us?
Yes, highly.
Hi. Thoughts on Mike Collins?
Tragic and somber day for our citizens. Lost a mayor for the first time active in office, and he was a mayor of, you got to say, he's a man of the people. Came up as a police officer, started on the streets of Toledo, taught students in our community as a professor. Kin to my heart, a fellow union leader. And got elected mayor under circumstances that many would have denied ever being plausible. But,
long shot in every stretch of the word, wouldn't you say?
Long shot, every stretch of the word is right, but took office when kind of climbed a mountain that everybody said couldn't be climbed. He did. Well, I don't think we can ever forget that, just as an exercise of democracy, too, when you look at a guy's career that started on the streets of Toledo and ended up in the mayor's office. It's kind of a can-do testimony to anybody out there. Obviously, our prayers and sympathies to the family. But having known Michael Collins and his personality, I think he would have the city shoulder on and do their duty as he did for all of us. And I think if we want to pay tribute to his spirit, he would like us to keep going and keep going with good pace, remembering and with reverence, again, the incredible story that was Steve Michael Collins.
It is reads like quite a book over all the years of public service, and all here. It's like we said, he wanted to stay here. Many people choose to go to other climes, but he wanted his life to be here.
And this community will respect that and honor that and grieve and mourn that. But as leaders of the government, that he was so passionate about, there are issues he would like us to continue to be successful at, that he started and others now have to finish.
One thing that Rob Ludeman mentioned, differences, but at the end of the day, you came together and you understood that while you may have had differences, and you two have had your differences.
We did.
Came together and understood that you're fighting for the common good. It's all for the good cause,
Right.
correct?
And the quality that Mayor Collins had was you could have those differences, but none of us ever felt disrespected to each other. There was that level of respect of position that I think was class. They conducted it that way. There were differences on operations and styles, but guess what? It was always about everybody ended up in the same right place.
Pete Gerken, thank you so much, Commissioner Gerken, for joining us at a very difficult time for our city and county leaders and everybody who knew Mayor D. Michael Collins. Thanks, Pete. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee. Bye.
Bye. Continuing to talk with some of the people who have served, who've known D. Michael Collins over the last 30, 40 years of his public service. Certainly some former mayors, and Donna Owens joining us now on the phone. Donna, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a very sad day.
You were, take the politics out of this. I don't even know if we need to mention parties here, but you served a while ago and as a Republican mayor, before the strong mayor form of government came to be in the city of Toledo. But just your thoughts on Mike Collins as you knew him over the years.
Well, I knew Mike Collins for a long time. When I was the mayor, he was head of the TPPA, and so I worked with Mike. And Mike really cared about the city, and I don't know of any other mayor that has faced so many critical challenges in their first year as he had. And he handled them well. He didn't get ruffled. He kept even keel in the city when we were going through our water crisis and kept the people informed. He loved the city, and he loved his Irish heritage. And I just can't say enough about what happened in the past year, because my heart just goes out to the family and knowing the real issues that he had to deal with in 1 year was almost unbelievable.
Tell us about some of the moments that you can, if you recollect some moments that you had with Mike over the years, Donna, that you can share with our viewers.
Well, we worked together, in the city. Like I say, he was the head of the police union, and we had a very good relationship. Mike served his membership well, and Mike was proud of being a police officer, and he did his job well. And then I had some lighter moments with Mike as well. We went on a trip with a lot of different people to Washington, and I remember our conversations about Ireland and his heritage, and he was talking to me about different Irish music that he had, and he loved life, and he loved his family, and he loved his city and his country. And I just think he was just a fine gentleman.
Don Owens, thank you so much for joining us, sharing some thoughts on the passing of Mayor D. Michael Collins. Thank you, Donna. We appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm joined now by my colleague Diane Larson on the anchor desk as we remember Mayor Mike Collins, who passed away just a short time ago.
The city saying just a very great sadness that they had to report that he did die today, of course suffering the cardiac arrest on Sunday. Just really hours after declaring that level 3 snow emergency. We saw him at the news conference. He was doing what he does best at those news conferences, which, as Donna Owens just mentioned, he's had an enormous amount on his plate this past year of tragedy and emergencies, and always at the forefront, just handling it with grace and with great control and leadership, which is, of course, what we expected of our mayor. Right. But right after that, has cardiac arrest, gets into a car accident, and apparently never recovers from that. Right,
despite the incredibly heroic efforts. And Rob Ludeman mentioned, if anything, something usually positive comes out of something like this is the awareness about CPR.
Right, we've got two events coming
Johnson,
up.
Andre Crisp, two big events coming up to teach people. So many of us had said so many more people will learn how to perform CPR now.
Absolutely. As we said, we've got a Red Cross event coming up this Saturday and then a big event at the Seagate Center on Valentine's Day. Lucas County Commissioner Tina Skeldon-Wozniak gratefully joins us on the phone today, and this must be such a sad day for you, Tina.
It's so sad. Our community is mourning. This was a man that he died in the line of duty. He was working very hard the day of the level 3 snow emergency, and he worked very hard to take care of all of us.
Tell us some of your thoughts, some of your personal recollections. You know, you've been around for a long time. He was around for a long time. Tell us about Mike Collins and your relationship over the years.
Well, he was a man that gave his heart and soul, you know, for all of us. He cared deeply that he was a lifelong public servant. You know, both with, you know, as a police officer, as a leader in his union, and as and I would see him regularly at the University of Toledo, taking care of, you know, teaching students all that he knew and having them have great knowledge, you know, both in the practical world of criminal justice and in the, the role of public service. I mean, he did so many different tasks. He cared deeply, and he loved teaching and sharing and loving the city, and great man.
I'm looking at some of the pictures. Diane talked about the pictures on Facebook that we were able to see here, and it's all about the zest for life, Diane, that he had. And Tina, you mentioned that too. But what you said there was so poignant. He died in the line of duty, and as a police officer of some 27 years, it's perhaps appropriate that he was working for the citizens of Toledo, for whom he worked for so many decades.
Yes, he was working hard that day. He was, very worried about the condition of the roads and the ice, and working closely with the sheriff to make sure that, everyone was, going to be okay. He was working hard with, president of council at the time, Paula Hicks-Hudson, and I was there with him, and he was making sure that, everything was settled before, we left that day, and he worked the job so many hours per day. He worked tirelessly.
Tina, the older we get, the more common this becomes. People that we love suddenly die. But tell us your thoughts right when you heard that he had been in the accident and something had happened to him.
It just like everybody else in the community, just like, all the men and women in our community, we stopped in our tracks and said, "Oh my goodness, this is just." It broke our hearts. I mean, it just stopped you, and you thought about your family, and you thought about his family, and you thought about him, and you wanted him to be okay, and you wanted to put any issues ever of difference, behind you, and just wanted him to be okay. But that morning, he shared with me, that morning he was in church at OLPH prior to coming in to the Emergency Management Agency to go, to work on the level 3 snow issues. He was a lovely, religious, wonderful guy, and we think of his family right now. We want to hug them if we could, and we just want them to be okay too, and he would want that too.
Absolutely, and respecting the privacy of the family, we absolutely intend to do that as well. But you were with him, as you say, really during his last hours. Anything stand out about you? Did he seem okay? Was he fine? Was he, in charge like he always is in these situations?
He seemed very good, and he did not complain of any health issues, that day. And in fact, I even talked to the sheriff and said, "Sheriff, did I miss something? Was he expressing any, illness that time when we were with him?" Because I would have wanted to talk to him about that and ask if he was all right. But he did not display any symptoms.
All right, Tina Skeldon-Wozniak, any thoughts, last thoughts here, Tina, about what you'll remember most about Mike Collins?
A kind, passionate leader who wanted to do everything he could to improve our community.
All right. Lucas County Commissioner Tina Skeldon-Wozniak, we thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts. And our thoughts are with you and all of the leaders in the days ahead as well.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. Bye.
All right. Next up, Tom Troy from the Toledo Blade has followed Mike Collins all along and even had the opportunity to talk to him and his wife Sandy in their house. And Tom joins us now from the Blade. And Tom, tell us some of your thoughts initially upon hearing this sad news today.
Well, it was not unexpected. You know, we had a certain sense of optimism, very cautious optimism at the start on Sunday and Monday, but the days passed without any confirmation of hope, and so it was not unexpected. It's not any the less hard, though. As one who covered Mike Collins since he was a councilman, ran for council in 2007, I can say he was always interesting to be around and always fun to be around, and a man who knew his material. Sometimes led to some long conversations. I actually had to end a few telephone conversations with him because he had so much to say, he had so many thoughts, he had so much information. So a man who was well versed for the job, I think, set a high bar for the office of mayor.
Yeah, I mentioned with Rob Ludeman, he did his homework, and he'd get you on the phone and want to talk about a certain issue. And I'd say, Mike, we got to go do the news now. It's almost 11 o'clock. But that's one of the qualities I always remember about him. Is he wanted to engage. He wanted to talk. He wanted to share. And that's one of the things that we'll remember. I understand you were at church last weekend, and the mayor was there as well, Tom.
Well, I happened to see him at 9 o'clock Mass. I don't think he went there on a regular basis, but he lives in the neighborhood. He and Sandy lived in the neighborhood. So when the weather was like it was, and I believe that the same thing happened just about exactly 1 year ago, he would go to OLPH. And afterwards we had a fairly long talk, and we talked about Jeep, we talked about the level 3 that was coming up. He didn't give me the impression of being under any physical or mental stress any more than usual anyway. He did have kind of a cold, which he'd been battling for about a month. Maybe there's something in that, I don't know. But he seemed to be in his usual form that morning, looking forward to his meeting with the sheriff at noon.
And Tom, you had the opportunity to get to know the mayor and his wife Sandy a little bit, visited their house, and he described them as a team. Tell us a little bit more about that relationship.
Well, Sandy was a cabinet secretary, a director of administrative services under Governor Voinovich, and she was general counsel for the University of Toledo. So really, really knowledgeable about the law and about government. And so you put her together with the passion and interest that Mike Collins had, and they were a formidable political team. She helped him run in 2007 for that District 2 seat. 10 people were running in that primary election. Some people, possibly even including myself, didn't give him a lot of high expectations. And he pulled it out just through dint of good legwork, going door to door, giving out literature, talking to people.
Yeah, so proud, so very proud in this mayoral race of the grassroots campaign, and it truly was a grassroots effort.
Right.
Have you had a chance to talk to folks in city government and had a chance to get their reactions and their thoughts?
Not too much. We just got the news around 2:30, and we've been working to put that together and start to get reaction. But of course, we've been gathering reactions for almost a week, and the reactions are just what Tina Skeldon said. The city lost a great admirer of the city, a very dedicated, selfless servant, and again, he's going to set a high bar for Mayor Hicks Hudson, who may have to take the oath again. In any case, she's going to be succeeding him as mayor until November. So yeah, he's going to be a tough act to follow.
All right, Tom, we'll let you get back to work there as you continue to gather reaction. And we thank you for joining us. We will talk to you again soon. Thank you.
And we talked a moment ago to Tina Skeldon-Wozniak, Lucas County Commissioner. Now we have another Lucas County Commissioner on the line, Carol Contrada. And thanks for being with us. And tell us again your thoughts. Just such a sad, sad day and such sad news.
It's just such a tragedy for Mayor Collins' family, for his friends, for this community. He will be terribly missed. He was a warm, generous gentleman in everything he did, and we will miss that caring nature that he had, that he brought forward in all of his words and all of his actions. It's just it's really quite overwhelming to think about the magnitude of our loss.
And this past week, Carol, your thoughts as we everyone hoped and prayed for the best, but thought this certainly could happen. As you take a look at the events of this past week, I also talked to Matt Sapporo, who was with the mayor at that news conference during the snowstorm last Sunday, and really hard to fathom that we go 5 days ahead and the mayor is gone now. So just your thoughts on that.
It's just it's hard to grasp. We, of course, from the county were intimately involved in that the decision to call a level 3, and I received a call about the mayor's accident just a couple hours after that news conference took place. I couldn't believe it. It was just shocking, and I'm assuming, like everyone here, looking for reasons to hope that there would be a recovery, and praying that would indeed come for the mayor and for his family, who he loved so much. So many times when I was with the mayor on business, we would talk about our families and about just his love of them and of the city, and it's just all week long. I kept thinking there's got to be some good news here. There's got to be some good news. It's really hard to comprehend that such a generous spirit has left us.
Carol, can you describe the mood this past week at One Government Center? It's been such a weird uncertainty for everybody this week. So much concern, but so much unknown. Has it been like that too down at the seat of government?
This is such a cohesive government that is in place right now at the City of Toledo, at Lucas County, in all the jurisdictions in Lucas County and regionally, that everyone just stepped up to the plate and did their jobs and offered to be of assistance if someone needed some extra time to work on a project that hadn't been on their plate. A real spirit of cooperation, which I have to say existed before the mayor's accident as well. Really wanting to cooperate, wanting to work, and everyone just, I think, this brought home how fragile life is and how every moment that we have to serve the people needs to be a moment that's filled with thoughtful decision making. Really a great deal of cooperation, but that's not a lot different than we saw anyway, and it just, I think, revived our belief in each other and that we're all working for the same common cause, the same common good.
All right, Carol Contrada, Lucas County Commissioner, we thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts with us at this sad time. Thank you so much.
And thank you for giving people the opportunity to share their love for the mayor.
All right.
Of course.
County Commissioner Carol Contrada, thank you, Carol. And we've heard from all the county commissioners now, Wozniak, Gerken, and now Carol Contrada. And we heard from Rob Ludeman, City Councilman. And I also want to hear from Larry Sykes, Toledo City Councilman as well. Larry, thanks for joining us. Your thoughts on sad news this afternoon. Your thoughts on Mike Collins.
First of all, my thoughts are with the family, prayers, and I think the entire city would say the same thing. You know, I served with Mayor Collins for a short period of time, 1 year, although I knew him prior to that. but we always were very cordial to one another. You know, when I came on, I sit down with him when I got elected and said that I can support anything that you tell me about and explain it to me if I see that it is good and for the majority. And he said, I can do that. When I got sworn in, he was one of the first ones that came after me and congratulate me, and we would pass one another's excuse me.
Are you okay?
I think the city lost a good leader, you know, unfortunately. At this time, a young person, aggressive, but, you know, Lee, he died what he loved doing, and that was serving this community as a soldier, as a police officer, and as the mayor. You know, he will be missed, and he will, you know, leave a legacy.
Larry, you mentioned that you were just elected, sworn in January of 2014, same time he was as well. It sure seems like you two worked together a lot longer because you have been very well known politically, as has he. You guys were two strong personalities. Tell us about any kind of headbutting moments, and I imagine you guys worked it out just fine, though, right?
Well, you know, believe it or not, we really never butted heads because we were always cordial to one another and knew what we stood for and what we believed in. And you got to respect the person for that. And as long as you keep it professional and not personally, you don't have headbutting. You know, when you can, as I said before, when I first took office and went up and sit down and we had a conversation and talked about things that we wanted, what we would do, and what I could support, what I would, as long as you're honest with me and truthful. And he said he would be. He said he would be open and honest, transparent. And, you know, with that, what else is there to argue about? And, you know, coming on council was new, and I respect those that had been here, and I really didn't get in any arguments with anyone. I thought he was doing a great job. He was always open and accessible. You know, it's just, it's unfortunate. A lot of things was thrown at him. I mean, he was truly baptized in fire. I mean, you get elected, you have a level 3, you got the water problem, you got to deal with Jeep, you got a budget that you have to deal with, you know, and he's sitting up on a Sunday telling people to be careful out there, to help one another, and lo and behold, not
just a few hours later.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
Larry Sykes, we thank you so much for being with us and sharing our thoughts, and love to hear what you had to say.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
All right, Larry Sykes, thank you. We also just received a statement from David Pepper, the Ohio Democratic Party chair. He says, and I'll just read this to you, "We're saddened to hear about the passing of Mayor Collins today, a lifelong Toledoan, a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, dedicated police officer, and union leader."
And finally, as mayor, Mayor Collins spent his life serving and protecting his community. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family during this very difficult time, along with the entire Toledo community. And we have on the phone also with us right now Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who has known D. Michael Collins for years and years and years. And Congresswoman Kaptur, thank you for being with us, and tell us your thoughts today and your memories of this man you had a long time friendship with.
Oh, yes, and as with all the citizens of our community and region, we extend the deepest sympathy and abiding gratitude to his wife, Sandy, to his children, to his family, to his colleagues, to his friends, his associates, the staff at Government Center, all those who served us. I really believe that he lives the words that are on our city seal, to labor and to pray. He died laboring for this city on a weekend. He had just left a meeting where he led a team declaring a level 3 snowstorm was on its way. He was working overtime. I had been with him the day before on Saturday. He was out working on Saturday. He was serving this community right up until that moment when, unfortunately, he had the cardiac arrest. And he, having been a Marine, was always faithful. He always, to the people of this community and our country. And that is the very essence of patriotism.
Congresswoman,
and he embodied it.
How would you characterize your relationship? Diane mentioned you knew Michael Collins for decades. How would you characterize your relationship with him?
I would say that it was a very, very trusted working relationship. The day before, we had talked about 3 or 4 subjects. After we left an event at the University of Toledo on diversity, we talked about the Great Lakes. He said at one point, Marcy, there's that one group in Washington, but for me to come and represent Toledo, they want $8,000, and I'm not going to spend $8,000 on that. I said, no, Mayor, you got me. I'll help you there. And so we joked about that. We talked about Woodward High School, the greenhouse at Woodward High School. We talked about Jeep. We had it was a relationship of trust and of mutual support. And there wasn't a time that I worked with Mike Collins on a city or regional or national issue that he wasn't completely trustworthy in what he said. He was a man of his word. He worked very hard. He loved this community. He really had a sense of civic duty that is precious and is our fundamental strength as a city and as a country. And he lived that every day of his life.
Congresswoman Kaptur, he began serving as a police officer in the 70s. You began representing Toledo in Congress in the early 80s. So you both have great love and passion for this city and this community. What can you tell the citizens of Toledo right now to help comfort them in this difficult time?
Well, first of all, we don't control when God takes us. And in his situation, he died doing what he loved. Serving. And he didn't suffer greatly from everything we know. And he had reached what he wanted to do, to lead our city. And so he had reached a life goal. And his first year in office, think of everything he had to handle. And he did it with such aplomb. He ferried us through the water crisis. He began assembling property around Jeep. He worked to bring ProMedica to downtown Toledo. Think of everything he did dealing with the tragic loss of the firefighters here in the very early weeks of his having been sworn in as mayor. And he had to be a strong father for us as community. In 1 year, all of these things happened. So it was really like almost on fast forward for everything that happened to him in such a short period of time. And we have to be grateful that we had such a leader and someone so approachable. You could talk to him about anything. And we have to do in his memory some of the unfinished work of this city. He never left Toledo through its hardest time. He dug in to help it. He never threw in the towel. He kept working. And he lived the motto of this city. He really is a father for our city and region, and we celebrate his life at the same time as we try to comfort his family and all of his associates.
Beautifully said, Congresswoman Kaptur. Thank you so much. I love what you said about reminding us all that he died loving what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
No question. Congresswoman, thank you. Thank you.
We have been at the University of Toledo Medical Center all week, which was where the mayor was taken right after his accident. Melissa Veitch has been standing by, delivering information from doctors and from city officials. And we want to send it now to Melissa, who is standing by with former Toledo Mayor Carty Finkbeiner.
Lee and Diane, I know that former Mayor Toledo Mayor, Carty Finkbeiner was actually headed in to see Sandy, Mayor Collins' wife, when you heard the news. And it is so very deeply sad to see what has happened here.
Yes, it is, but I want to take a little different view. Mike lived 70 years, and he gave everything he had to that 70 years. I didn't know him when he was at Central Catholic or Libby High School, Didn't know him when he was in college, but I have known him for the last quarter century as a heck of a leader for the Toledo Police Patrolmen, a very energized councilman, and a very, very driven, energetic mayor. So he held nothing back. That Irish heart of Mike's gave everything he had to give. And when one lives 70 years and has given of himself as generously as Mike Collins has given of himself, we can also celebrate that we had him for 70 years. And in the last several years, he's been a leader for us in the city of Toledo.
You have been a great deal of support for the Collins family. I mean, what do you say to them, and how are they handling this to your knowledge? It's just so very heartbreaking for the family. They have sat vigil all week.
Sandy's a very, very strong woman. Had her own experience in politics, so when she worked for Governor Voinovich, she learned a little bit of the rough and tumble that politics has to offer. I don't know Mike's daughters. I know they're here, but I know all of our hearts go out to Sandy. My prayer has been, knowing Mike was quite serious all week long, if you can spare him, Lord, return him with a good head and a good body, because he and Sandy deserved. I wasn't thinking of the mayorship as much as I was he and Sandy being able to spend a few more years of their lives together in joy and happiness and travel. And if that wasn't possible, I didn't really want him lingering in anything less than full health and a good mind with Sandy, his wife.
What do you say to the city of Toledo? Certainly a staff very dedicated to Mayor Collins, and the citizens of Toledo have really come forward in support. So what do you say to the community that he fought so hard to help over the years as they try to heal as well?
That we should celebrate his life for the next several days. We should celebrate Mike's life and his commitment to improving the quality of life for Toledo families and policemen and their families. Secondly, that we should get behind Paula Hicks Hudson, who 5 short days ago, never had an idea that she would probably sit in the mayor's office as she is presently as the interim mayor and soon to be the full-fledged mayor. Let's get behind Paula Hicks Hudson in every way, shape, or form we possibly can as a community. And let's get behind the city council members and the administration. A lot of good men and women down there with a lot of years of experience, some of which Mike took a little criticism for some of the veterans on city administration. I think right now we probably should all be very grateful that veterans like Bob Reinbold and others that have returned to public service to work in the Collins administration are there with their years of experience. I think they'll move forward very professionally, and the whole rest of the community, as I said to someone yesterday, you know what Mike Collins will want us to do after we've said our prayers of gratitude and blessing for his wife and good wishes for Sandy and the rest of the family? Mike would probably say, I've noted a few city sidewalks out there in front of people's homes. Everybody get those shovels out and let's start cleaning the snow up. And if you owe a parking ticket to the city of Toledo, make sure that parking ticket's getting paid. He was a true old-fashioned Irish leader, and he would be urging us to carry on and do those things that would indeed continue to make the city of Toledo a wonderful place to live.
You know, I thought of that too, and in having the privilege of interviewing him several times over the last year, he often spoke of how Toledo is going through a renaissance and it will be a different place in 5 years. What do you see as moving forward? Will we be able to fulfill that dream for him?
I think so. I've said for many, many years that we in the Great Lakes area, and we've taken some losses, population. At one time, the automobile industry was declining. We certainly go through seasons of the year at times like this when warmer weather looks a little more attractive. But ultimately, the water on the Great Lakes, as droughts hit, and it will, global warming is very much a part of reality. And in the places that are dry and sandy and don't get much rain or snow in the wintertime, that can become reservoirs and water for their use in the spring and summer, we'll be sitting pretty with that water of the Great Lakes. And we know we have talented workers here in this part of the world. Our universities are strong. The Midwest, the Great Lakes, and Toledo, Ohio, right in the center of all of that. If we just take care of the basic fundamentals of what makes a city great, safety, good schools, clean streets, we take care of those things, we'll be fine.
Right. Thank you so much,
You're very welcome.
former Mayor, Toledo Mayor Carty Finkbeiner. We appreciate you taking some time to talk with us, and I know that you wanted to talk with Sandy, so we'll let you continue.
Thank
It's
you
good to
very
see you.
much.
Thank you. So, Lee and Diane, again, we are at UTMC where we have been for the last week. I will go ahead and send it back to you.
Melissa, thank you.
Melissa, thanks very much. You know, and Lee and I were sitting here remembering right after he was elected mayor back in November 2013, you and I were hosting the holiday parade in downtown Toledo, and we were on our viewing stand, and we noticed off to the side by himself, smiling like a little kid, was Mayor-elect Mike Collins. And what did he come up and say to you afterwards?
He said, verbatim, I can't believe that I'm mayor.
With
I mean,
this
he was
smile.
so excited of what the job that lied ahead for him.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, that was an interesting and neat moment where he was like a little boy, just thrilled at Christmas morning. That's what he seemed like, and that gives you an idea on how much passion that he brought to the job and how much love he had for the job.
And of course, never knowing what would confront him in his first year in office. And from Congresswoman Kaptur to Rob Ludeman to Donna Owens, all saying the challenges that he faced in that first year, really incredible. But I have to tell you that he was our first guest on Conklin & Company of this year, and we talked about those challenges, but he came in with a smile on his face. There are many things on his plate. The ProMedica deal was still brewing at that time. Wrangler, still dealing with that. A lot of uncertain things. Sticky contract negotiations, ironically, with the police union that he once led. But he was ready to go, ready to take on those challenges. And
we're going to be seeing that in a moment, aren't we?
Moments, yeah.
We want to talk now. We have on the phone now Councilman Tyrone Riley, who joins us, and you are a fairly newcomer, a freshman, I guess we could say, to the whole political scene. What was your relationship like with the mayor?
Well, thank you. I had the opportunity during my first year on City Council to sit right next to Mayor Collins. It was truly a learning experience. He was always prepared, asked many questions, worked hard, and loved his job. So I learned a great deal from him.
Tell us your thoughts when you heard what happened. It was almost unbelievable to a lot of people. It was almost like you suspended belief. Like, could this really be happening?
It was sad. It was truly sad because he was truly a public servant. And as I said, he loved his job. And when I first heard about it, and I'm speaking of the accident, that was truly him. He was hands-on. He wanted to be in the midst of the action. He didn't want people telling him what's going on. He wanted to be there to see it firsthand. And so I wasn't surprised that he was in the neighborhood seeing what was going on, making sure that the streets were plowed and things of that nature, because that was the type of person he was, and he loved doing it.
You mentioned the learning experience, Tyrone, and your District 1. He was a fighter for District 2 and a fighter for the entire city, becoming mayor. But some of the things that you did learn from Mayor Collins in the year you sat next to him, as you said, he always was ready, did his homework, certainly ready to talk about what he was learning, correct?
That is correct. He did not look at serving on City Council as a part-time job. He looked upon it as a full-time job, and he gave that type of attention to the job at hand. Always prepared for council, always prepared to deal with whatever issue was before council. He was truly a leader in that respect.
Well, our thoughts and prayers are with council as you folks continue the job of running this city with the new mayor, Paula Hicks Hudson, newly appointed, and as Tom Troy told us, will probably be sworn in again. And we thank you so much, Councilman Riley, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
And thank you.
All right, we want to go downtown now, as you mentioned, the business of government going forward, and our Amy Montgomery gauging reaction too to what is a very sad day today. Amy?
Well, Lee, Toledo definitely very somber. We've had the opportunity to speak with several different people, just people who have been out and about the passing of Mayor Collins, and all of them very saddened and shocked. I want to show you, we just got downtown, and shortly after the announcement of his passing, you can see that the flags here at Government Center are flying at half staff. They're also flying at half staff over at the police department, obviously in honor of Mayor D. Michael Collins. But as we mentioned, we did get a chance to speak with many people here in the community. Collins' condition has really been something that's been closely watched, obviously not only by the doctors and his family, but the people who live here in Toledo and really beyond. Many people we spoke with, they tell us that they're very saddened to hear this. They say he was a good man, and in a situation like this, they say political parties really have to be pushed aside because everybody is feeling this loss, Republican, Democrat, Independent, or otherwise. You know, they also expressed words of sympathy to Collins' family, and especially the people who are here at Government Center, the ones that worked with Collins on a day-to-day basis. You mentioned, council, obviously all the people on his administration feeling a huge loss today. But here in the community, this is something that they've been watching. They've been hoping for the best. Many people sending prayers and well wishes. We've seen that a lot over the last week. Many people very, very saddened to hear of his passing, and now they're just hoping for peace and comfort for the Collins family and, of course, all of the people that did work with Mayor Collins here at Government Center. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
I know you've been covering this all week, getting gauging reaction and that sort of thing. You find out that sometimes people aren't always very interested in local government, and it seems to be sort of a boring subject for a lot of just folks on the street. But have you also noticed that there is a lot of people, have been so many people who've been so concerned and so interested in the mayor's condition? Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the people we spoke to today, actually, I asked them if they thought that this tragedy has somehow brought this community together, and they say it has, and they say that they've seen that a lot over the last week. People really coming together, as I mentioned, political parties aside, this is something that, people have genuinely been concerned about, and they've united over. They've come together. We saw schools handing out cards, of course, that flag that people were signing for well wishes. It really didn't matter, what they believed. They just wanted to come down. They wanted to show their support, and I think that really says a lot about the community that we live in.
All right, Amy, thank you. I'll let you get back gauging more reaction. Our Amy Montgomery covering the passing of Mayor Mike Collins, getting reaction downtown. And we're getting statements and reaction from all over the state and certainly our local representatives.
That's right. We heard from Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. Congressman Bob Latta then just released this statement. Marcia, that is his wife, and I extend our deepest sympathies to Sandy and the entire Collins family.
Going on to say Mike was a public servant who truly put service and his constituents above himself. Toledo and Northwest Ohio have lost a leader, and he will be sorely missed.
And State Senator Randy Gardner says that he is saddened by today's news. In a statement, he says, while I did not know him well prior to his election as mayor, we promptly began working together on a number of good issues, or a good number of issues important to Toledo and our region.
And Randy Gardner going on to say, I deeply respected his work ethic, and that's a common theme here, and his dedication to public service. This is a terrible loss for his wife Sandy and his family, and a colossal loss for our region. And I mentioned that Mayor Collins was the first guest we had on Conklin and Company. I want to take a look at just what he had to say going forward, and interesting especially at the end of this piece, what Mike Collins has to say.
He led the city through an incredibly tumultuous first year in office. The deaths of 2 Toledo firefighters, the worst winter in Toledo history, and the water crisis. But as our first guest of 2015 on Conklin and Company, Mike Collins was upbeat, looking ahead and giving credit.
I think I've had the finest team in the world that could ever have been created when you look at each of the challenges individually and collectively.
Coming off the holidays on that January 2nd, Mayor Collins and I talked about economic development, including something that had been on his radar for years.
I do see something for the future of Southwick. It could be a medical cluster. We are having discussions along those lines.
The mayor emphasizing the city's determination to keep Wrangler
We're going up to sell this city because we have the workforce, we have the leadership.
Even letting us in on a phone conversation he had with Sergio Marchionne, the Fiat Chrysler CEO.
I said, I'll come to Italy and I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be on a plane tonight if that's what's necessary.
And with the heat on over other serious issues, the mayor didn't dodge questions, including the contentious negotiations with the police union he once led.
We have to demonstrate that we have physical control of our city, and we can't continue using that capital improvements fund for a budget stabilization fund.
But at the end of the interview, just over a month ago, the mayor wanted to make sure he delivered a message.
I would like to say to the city of the citizens, and thank you for the privilege of allowing me to have this responsibility, and I won't let you down.
And it's safe to say he didn't let anyone down. He was doing his job that day, less than a week ago.
And he sounded like he had a little bit of a cold. Tina Skeldon-Wozniak told us that he had been battling a cold for a month, it had seemed.
And it was January 2nd.
Right, so it seemed like a long time. I mean, he is just he was either just leaving or just returning from the GoDaddy Bowl watching the Toledo Rockets in Alabama.
Right.
So he probably was just leaving
the
third.
I think that was the third or fourth, right?
Yeah.
And so excited to go watch Toledo play, his beloved Rockets.
Sure.
And, of course, he was a professor there in criminal justice, and just really loved the Toledo Rockets. He loved Toledo, and we can safely say that. There were obviously, this is a politician, a public servant, and there were differences. And many other politicians and public servants had their differences with Mike Collins, but they can't say that he didn't do his homework and that he was willing to engage in aggressive debate. But at the end of the day, he would smile and understand that it was about the greater good. I think we can safely say that.
And I thought it was interesting to hear Larry Sykes' opinion of him, that they didn't butt heads. These were two guys with strong opinions, and they didn't fight. They just were two people who understood and respected the fact that you don't have to love me, you don't have to love my view, you don't have to love my stance, but you do need to respect it, and they had great respect in that arena.
Fiat Chrysler CEO Sergio Marchionne, we heard from Mayor Collins, former late Mayor Collins, in that piece about Wrangler, and Marchionne just releasing this statement today.
He said he's sad to learn that Mayor Collins has died, adding, on this sad occasion, we recall his long and dedicated service to the city of Toledo.
More specifically, Marchionne says his tireless support for the Toledo Assembly Complex. We truly miss his leadership and send our deepest sympathy to his family and to the people of Toledo. And such a big story recently and going forward, the whole Wrangler situation. And the mayor saying he would go to Italy that day, get off the phone and fly and meet with Sergio Marchionne.
I want to take now a moment. Our news director, Brian Trauring, has put together some memories of the mayor.
When candidates run for office, they often use patriotic red, white, and blue theme colors on campaign material, including signs and bumper stickers. When Mike Collins ran for mayor, his signs were distinctive, green and white, with these two words: Collins cares. That phrase fittingly summed up the candidate and the man. Like most politicians, he made countless public appearances at local events like the annual holiday parade and the Hope for the Holidays toy drive. But the sense was he didn't just have to be there, he wanted to be there. He loved it, and it showed through his kind words of support and a broad smile. Prior to one of our 13 ABC debates, each candidate showed up with 2 or 3 campaign workers and handlers. They went into a private reserved room to prepare, but when candidate Collins arrived, he was alone and preferred simply to wait in the lobby until it was time to go. It reflected his unpretentious approach to things like that. No makeup, no phony baloney, simple and straightforward like his slogan, Collins cares. Could he be strong-willed? You bet. His training and experience as a police officer instinctively taught him to take charge. During private conversation in his office on the 22nd floor of One Government Center, he was confident and decisive. Collins cares about Toledo, and now Toledo will show how much it cares for Mayor Collins, his family, and friends. During his final opportunity to demonstrate leadership, with a snowstorm bearing down on the region, he talked about Toledo's citizens. During the news briefing shortly before his accident, Collins told the community, "We'll get through this together." And we did. If he were here now, what do you think he would say? I'm sure he would encourage all of us to come together once again, and we'll get through it.
News Director Brian Trowering with those lovely thoughts.
Beautiful.
And just not too long ago, Toledo Police, he was, as we said, 27-year veteran of the police force, 10 years of that serving as the head of the Police Patrolmen's Union. TPD broadcast over the public radio system just a few minutes ago this message. Take a listen.
D. Michael Collins was sworn into the office of mayor on January 2nd, 2014. The city of Toledo mourns its mayor as well as expresses deep sympathy for the family and close friends of Mayor Collins. Funeral arrangements for Mayor Collins will be released when available. Please lower the station flags in honor of Mayor Collins. This concludes our special announcement.
You know, Brian Trowering and many people have talked about green. His signs were green for his Irish heritage. He wore green a lot. Interesting, we are wearing red today because this is coincidentally Go Red for Women, reminding folks that heart disease is the #1 killer of both men and women. And if there can be any good that has come out of this, like you mentioned just a little bit ago, the enormous interest in hands-only CPR and the two events coming up. There is an event at Red Cross tomorrow, Saturday, February 7th, free CPR training. You won't be certified, but you will learn the correct hands-on method for providing CPR, and then a huge event at the Valentine Theater, or at the Seagate Center on Valentine's Day. Also, once again, Toledo Fire Department EMTs helping to provide training for CPR, because we know those two good Samaritans who rushed in when so many other people would have driven on by.
No one will ever forget Andre Crisp and Evelyn Johnson for their heroic efforts on that Sunday afternoon. If you're just joining us now, we received word this afternoon around 1:30, or 2:30, pardon me, that Mayor Collins has passed away at the age of 70. We've been talking with friends and colleagues and other folks who are giving us their reflections of Mayor Collins and their thoughts on a very sad day today for the city of Toledo.
But what a wonderful legacy that began on July 3rd or June 30th. 1944, that was the day he was born here in Toledo, lifelong Toledoan. Married Sandra Drabek on July 8th, 2005. She's an attorney. She's his second wife. He has 3 daughters with his first wife, and among the family, 8 beautiful grandchildren. And there are some pictures of them that you're seeing right now.
And all of them, of course, by his side this week. 2 daughters live in San Diego. They were here, a third in Columbus, who drove up during that snowstorm on Sunday to be by his side. And when we talked about his run for mayor in that grassroots campaign, Diane, his grandkids were in his campaign ad. The slogan, of course, Collins Cares. He grew up such pride in the old South End, in South Toledo, lived in Toledo all of his life, and certainly very proud. And you mentioned that green, the green Collins Cares, the unmistakable green Mike Collins sweater. That we would see numerous times.
If it wasn't green, it was blue and gold for the University of Toledo. Sylvania Mayor Craig Stowe is on the phone with us right now once again. And Mayor, this must be a difficult time for you as well. Your neighbor to the east, I suppose we could say, if my geography, if I'm looking at a map correctly, passing away today. Can you tell us your thoughts right now?
Well, this is very sad. They're mayors, all our peers, and we talk to one another and share the stresses that we share in office. And Mike took things to heart very seriously and was trying to do his best for his citizens. And perhaps that caught up with him. It's a lonely job to be a mayor, and I wish his family well. Mike did his best and was doing a terrific job, and he will be missed very much by Toledo and all of Northwest Ohio.
Were you able to talk about the challenges or the fraternity that is being a leader of a city? Did you exchange those thoughts?
Actually, I was privileged to talk with Acting Mayor Paula Hicks Hudson this morning and shared with her, and we both talked about how your life changes when you become a mayor. You're no longer under the radar. People are always wanting to know what your thoughts are, wanting your opinion before you may have had a chance to form one. And it's a stressful life to live, especially as the mayor of a big city like Toledo. She has a hard way to go as well, catching up and getting into that position, and I wish her all the best in the world as well.
Well, tell us some of the stresses, some of the difficulties of leading a city.
You have to lead for everybody, whether it's a well-off person or a person in need, or your union workers on the line, or your safety officials. They all need something from you, and they aren't necessarily looking out for everybody else, but it's the mayor's job to bring that all together, to do the best for everybody he can. And that's a tough spot to be in, because you can't be all things to all people. But Mike wanted to be, and we hope for the best for his successor. He did a great job, and may he rest in peace.
Well said. Thank you. Mayor Stone of Sylvania, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Collins, I think someone described him as an educator and an agitator. He was a feisty fellow, that's for sure. But an educator, no, he would own that, absolutely. Yeah. But an educator and a good relationship with the next gentleman we have on the phone, Toledo Public Schools Superintendent Romulus Durant. And Dr. Durant, can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts right now as you're hearing the sad news today?
You know what? I'm saddened along with the district and the students, and to know that he is a TPS proud graduate of Libby High School, and was a huge supporter for public education and supporting levies in regard to students of today. And just knowing his public service in regards to a police officer, a councilman, and a mayor, and he was just Toledo proud, and you know, he showed that pride.
Similarities with you. You're a cheerleader for Toledo Public Schools. You're certainly a cheerleader and a fighter for the city of Toledo. You feel like you kind of shared some kinship there?
You know what? One of the things we really joke is that, when we would do this circuit to different events, we would always seem to show up to the same events, and, we always touted the same, mannerism of being TPS proud, but more importantly, being Toledo proud. And so I just can't say enough about, the work he has done here in Toledo, the commitments and sacrifice, have a legacy to go on.
Dr. Durant, we thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today and really appreciate it. We want to go back to Melissa Veit. She's at UTMC, which is where many people had been all this week, hoping and praying for the best for the mayor.
All right, Melissa, standing by.
Well, Lee and Diane, it was 5 days ago that Toledo Mayor Mike Collins was brought here to UTMC, and I think over the last week we have seen the highest level of medical care for the mayor. Anyone who goes into cardiac arrest, especially, especially if it's an unwitnessed event, is what we've been hearing all week, where we don't know how long the mayor was without oxygen, their chances of survival is said to be at 10%. And then for every minute they're without oxygen, that survival rate goes down by 10%. So you're dealing with a very serious situation, and oftentimes we do not see a result in someone surviving this. Something that has come out of this, I think, over the last week is people have a greater understanding of the treatment for cardiac arrest. They have a greater understanding for the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest. We saw, again, it was Toledo cardiologist Chris Cooper who treated the mayor, and again at the gold standard level where we talked about hypothermia treatment, where they lower the body temperature and allow the body to heal, and then they bring the patient gradually out of that to see if there is any kind of permanent brain damage. Certainly in this case we saw that there was some irreparable damage, but we also saw some very heroic actions from the two bystanders who stopped and attempted to give CPR to Mayor Collins, Toledo firefighters who did the same. And in speaking with cardiologists over the past week, they said, if you see someone go into cardiac arrest, even if you don't think you know how to do CPR, call 911 and do as much as you can. We talked about doing 100 beats per minute for CPR. I think as a result of this, we will see a greater awareness of how to do that. And it did help get the mayor at least to UTMC. It did attempt to save his life. You know, again, we talk about a heartbreaking outcome, and certainly miracles come in many different forms. And anybody who knew Mayor Collins knew that he was a very tough Irishman, and that certainly he wouldn't want to live in a compromised life. And that was a threat as a result of cardiac arrest. There are some people who do survive to the point, but have great physical and mental impairment. And I think anyone would know that that's not the way that Mike would have wanted to live. He was a fighter, and he was, if anything that's come out of this, a lot of people call him a very tough Irishman. And so we want to wish his family the very best. And our prayers have been with him all week. And also prayers going out to Dr. Chris Cooper, who very publicly took this news very hard, took his role here very personally, and to the people who took care of him here at UTMC. Reporting live, Melissa Bates, 13 ABC Action News.
Melissa, well said. Thank you very much. And of course, it goes almost without saying that everybody has his family in their hearts and in their prayers, because while he was a mayor and while he was a public official, he was a husband, he was a father, he was a grandfather. And as we know in our lives, as they say on your tombstone isn't going to be how many hours you put in at the office. It was going to be the love that you spread, and it seemed like he was very well loved.
And before the camera would go on, he would always talk about where he was. He saw his daughters, and he beaming to talk about his family. And you love to hear that, because that's, I mean, truly, we understand that's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about.
Melissa mentioned the doctor, Dr. Chris Cooper. If you saw the news conference last Sunday afternoon with him, you saw just how serious this was going to be. He was very emotional.
At first we thought, is he very nervous, because this was on live TV and this was all eyes on him, and then you realized he was very emotional, and the gratitude he expressed to the Good Samaritans, Evelyn Johnson and Andre Crisp, for taking the initiative to get the mayor out of his car and try to administer CPR until EMTs could get there. He was an impressive guy, and did his best, and like Melissa said, our thoughts go out to him as well.
Right, everyone involved. Police Chief Mike Navarre, who knew Mike Collins perhaps better than most, joins us now, the Police Chief of the City of Oregon, but of course formerly the Police Chief of the City of Toledo. Chief, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Tell us your thoughts right now, and if you could remind us on how you knew him. You knew him serving as a police officer, right?
I met Mike back in 1977 when I joined the police department. Mike was a detective working in the Vice Squad undercover, was assigned to the Metro Drug Task Force, and his office was located out on West Bancroft in an area that I patrolled, so we stopped in there on frequent occasions, and I got to know him, not real well, but I got to know him, and I formed my first impression of him as being a very conscientious, hard-working detective with a great sense of humor.
Were you, now he was the president of the TPPA, were you a patrolman at that time, or had you risen in the ranks?
Well, Mike was the president for quite a long period of time. And when I was first assigned to the police administration, I was working in internal affairs in 1988. Mike handled all the disciplinary cases for his members, so I interacted with Mike on a daily basis. And then I had other positions in the administration, first as a captain and then as a deputy chief, and we interacted daily on all sorts of labor management issues, employee grievances, disciplinary cases, and contract negotiations. I think we went through those, him and I, at least on 3 different occasions. So I got to know him quite well, and most of what I practice and value today in terms of good labor management, I learned from Mike Collins because he was a master.
You mentioned, Chief, a number of times you said interactions. While Mayor Collins Mike was leading the TPPA, can you share with us about some of those that perhaps you haven't before? That we keep hearing what a fighter Mike Collins was. Can you speak to that?
Well, Mike always acted in the best interest of his members. As a union president, just as when he was mayor, acting in the best interest of the citizens of Toledo, and as a council member, always the person that did the homework and was conscientious. But Mike knew when to fight. He knew when not to fight. He wasn't foolish enough to spend union money on fights that he couldn't win. And because our relationship was such a positive one, we never lied to each other. We always put everything on the table. He was a man of great integrity. We were able to resolve our differences 99% of the time. Rarely did we have to go to an arbitrator and bring someone in, a third party, to make a decision that the two of us couldn't make amicably. And a lot of times those discussions were spirited. We didn't always agree, but at the end of the day, we always respected each other's opinion. And we remained friends for many times. We went through a lot of controversy together in TPD, and we were able to get through it. And because Mike was always acting in the best interest of the Toledo Police Department, which was all of our goals.
Now, you left the Toledo Police Chief before he became mayor. Had you seen him lately? When was the last time you saw him?
Well, we would run into each other at different events. I'm on a number of committees, which takes me down to the government center a couple times a month, and we would see each other in the lobby. And Mike would call me on occasion, and we'd talk about things. And whenever I saw something that he did or that I liked or didn't like, I would shoot him off an email, and he would respond to that. And he was one of those that answered all his own emails. He did that as a council member and continued that as mayor. I'm not sure when I last saw him. I'm thinking it was probably about 3 weeks ago in Government Center. We ran into each other. But he was jovial, as he always is. He's always smiling, always good-natured, and I'm going to miss that smile.
Even in the tough times, he always would smile.
He did, and he thrived. That's where he was at his best. He was the kind of guy that just thrived in those situations and handled them so well. And he was a college professor, but in a lot of respects, he was a teacher in everyday life. A lot to be learned by watching his management style.
And we'll have those lessons to remind us of him for years to come. Oregon Police Chief Mike Navarre, also former Toledo Police Chief, we thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My honor. Thank you.
13 ABC's Amy Montgomery is downtown, where she's been talking to some folks about the sad news today that Toledo Mayor Mike Collins has died. Amy?
Well, Diane, definitely a sad day here in Toledo, and they're already honoring Mayor Mike Collins here at Government Center and the Police Department. You can see the flags here being flown at half-staff again in honor of Mayor Mike Collins. We've been out and about here in the community today. We've been talking to people. Many of the people we spoke to hadn't even heard the news until we told them, many of them just finding out. And I think all of them are shocked, even though he was in the hospital, many hoping that he would have pulled through and would have been able to take his seat back here on the 22nd floor at Government Center. Many people expressed their thoughts and prayers for his family and for the people that worked with him on a day-to-day basis, city council, members of his administration. Many people say that they're hoping for the best, and they're feeling as if Mayor Collins has sort of brought the community together over the last week, putting political parties aside, everybody kind of rallying around the same goal and sending good thoughts and well wishes to the mayor as he was in the hospital. Now, as I mentioned, we did catch up with a few people who live in Toledo who were just finding out the news today. Go ahead and take a listen.
It was so sad. I mean, he just became mayor, to see this dream achieved and then have this happen is awful.
It was sad, real sad. He seemed like a great guy.
And we've been seeing those same kinds of messages all week, whether it be social media, whether it be people calling our newsroom, or people just out in the streets talking to us about they're upset, they feel for the family as they go through this very difficult time, and they're really hoping for the best as they move into the future, but definitely a sad day here in Toledo. Now, right now, I want to bring in Ignacio Messina. He is with the Toledo Blade, and Ignacio, you worked with the mayor. You've actually been working with him since he's been a city councilman. What can you tell me about what you've been hearing today?
People remember him as a tenacious fighter. He's never been known to back away from a fight. Something I heard a lot today, that he's a compassionate man, something Councilman Tom Winooski says, that he restored funding for homeless shelters, that he fought always for the little guy. One of the things he wants to do in trying to honor the mayor is get the Northwest District Police Station named after him. as an honor to him. But again, we're hearing a lot more, like you heard Mike Navarro said. He always had, other people's thoughts in mind, and he could be pugnacious. He, didn't back away from a fight, especially when it was, a fellow council member when he was on council or when he took over as mayor. He really, he had his own agenda and he stuck to it.
Absolutely. You've been to many council meetings. I've seen you here at council meetings. What was one of the last memories that you have of the mayor?
Well, the mayor and I had a discussion, actually, oddly enough, about his health, because he had just had a physical before he went to Washington for a U.S. Conference of Mayors. And, he told me that he had a clean bill of health, and his doctor said that he had blood work, and then he was looking well, which I think is one of the reasons this has been such a tragedy and such a surprise for his staff. If you go into Government Center right now, there are a lot of tears, and his staff are hugging each other, and they're really taking this hard. Understandably.
You spoke with some of the staff members. You talked about the Northwest District Station. Have you heard anything else from some of the people on council that are used to seeing him there?
Well, they're trying to think of ways to honor the man. They're talking a lot about his legacy, as you heard. He was a police officer, he was a council member, a university professor. Most of his adult life was spent in the service of, this country or this city. Mm-hmm. So they're working really on ways to try and honor the man.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people here in the community are doing the same thing. We've also been gathering reaction from council members and from Congress people, and I want to bring in my colleague Alexis Means. And Alexis, you've been speaking with people here at Government Center.
That's exactly right. We've been talking to a number of city council people who have expressed their sadness and saying that it's an unfortunate situation, obviously, for the city of Toledo. We caught up with Larry Sykes, City Councilman Larry Sykes, and this is what he had to say.
It's unfortunate. Obviously the prayers go to the family. We got to keep them in our prayers. What I said before is that, what I call RID, and that's Republicans, Independents, and Democrats need to come together to make sure that the city continue to run in the direction that Mayor Collins is running in.
I really believe strongly that D. Michael Collins lived the motto of this city. If you look at our flag, it says laborare et orare, to work and to pray. And he died while he was working for us.
And as Marcy Kaptur said, Mayor Collins really enjoyed his work here for the city of Toledo. He was very passionate about what he was involved in, and he brought that passion right into One Government Center every day when he came to work. He really fought for the citizens of Toledo, and it was a very difficult 1 year for the mayor. I mean, we had the water crisis, and then we had 2 firefighters who passed away, and then obviously we had Jeep as well as some other issues on the table. So it was a very stressful time for him. But again, as Marcy Kaptur mentioned, he was very passionate about his job, and he brought intensity into the office every day to fight for the citizens of Toledo. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Alexis, thank you.
Thanks very much. And as Amy showed us earlier, flags at half staff downtown in honor of Mayor Mike Collins passing away just about an hour and a half ago after that cardiac arrest on Sunday, and the city sending out a release saying they had held out hope for his recovery, and the city also offering condolences for his wife Sandy Drabick, his 3 daughters, his family, his friends, his 8 grandchildren, and the community that loved him. The city also thanking the medical staff at the University of Toledo Medical Center for all the care and support that they provided, and also making mention of Evelyn Johnson and Andre Crisp. Those are the 2 Good Samaritans who saw the accident, came to the door, saw the car was locked, called 911, listened as the EMT walked them through how to get the mayor out, not knowing, of course, that this was the mayor at the time, and trying to administer life-saving CPR, which, if anything, it kept him alive until all the people who loved him so dearly could be around him during this difficult time.
And the way he would want it, paying that goodwill forward with the events to teach a lot of folks CPR in the next couple of weeks.
He said at that news conference, you'll recall, let us be compassionate, let us help our citizens, and so interesting that somebody helped him. And asking us to just remember everybody else and just be kind. Be kind to people in their time of need.
The city going on to say, we stand together as a city and community. We will continue to move forward as a great city in homage to Mayor Collins you will do better in Toledo. And when the mayor was on Conklin and Company, he managed to drop that slogan in a couple of times, that you will do better in Toledo.
It really is remarkable when you think back. You and I have worked in this town for a long time, and when you think back on the first year of any other mayor in the city of Toledo having to deal with the things that Mayor Collins had to deal with, it is just a remarkable amount of emergencies, stressors, challenges that he was up to every single step along the way.
In his campaign, one of the big projects, or I should say the big issues, was who will you hire as an economic development director? He hires Matt Supara, and they have these big projects in the works. There was debate over ProMedica and this parking garage, and it turned out really to be not a great debate after all, because it was an 11-to-1 vote. He was very proud of this ProMedica deal that is still moving forward now. And looking ahead at Wrangler, and saying that he was ready to go meet Sergio Marchionne in Italy, Switzerland, wherever it took, and he would have. There's no doubt about that, and I think he'll be watching proudly as the city continues to work to keep Wrangler in Toledo as we go forward.
Leaving a legacy that will be remembered for years to come. We heard from Ignacio Messina from the Blade talking to Toledo City Councilman Tom Winooski about, at this point, making an effort to rename the Northwest District Police Station that Mayor Collins worked so hard to reopen after Mike Collins.
Okay.
And we have right now Ohio Governor John Kasich with us right now. Governor Kasich, we thank you so much for being with us today. And would you share your thoughts with us on hearing the news of the passing of Mayor Collins?
Well, I like Mayor Collins a whole lot. We, of course, work day and night on the water crisis in Toledo. He came to my inauguration. We had a number of calls, and he sent me a beautiful note. I guess it might have been before Christmas, just saying that he really treasured our friendship, and I've been in touch here in the last couple of days with Sandy, his wife, and he's a terrific guy. He really just loved the city, and he just loved everything about it, and he was really just doing his best. And I really think that his commitment to that job, that office, really, it took a toll on him, in my opinion. He took everything so seriously and everything very, very personally. And I'm going to miss him. I really liked him. We were, in a short period of time, we were kind of pals. I really liked him a lot, and I gave him some advice, encouraged him. It just was, he's just a good guy, and I'm very saddened, and I'm going to miss him.
Oh, you're not alone. Can you share some thoughts with the folks of Toledo right now who are mourning the loss of their leader?
Well, what they should know is that this was a guy who loved the people that lived in Toledo. Of course, he loved the whole community. He took a lot on his shoulders, in my opinion, and like I say, everything was, how can I do my job better? How can I be more involved? And I think that the fact that he took so much of this personally was just an added stress. I don't want to blame that on what happened, but I just have to tell you that I think issues there weighed on him, and he was just a very, very fine public servant. And the other thing, he was just a really kind of a cool guy. He was like your next door neighbor.
Right.
He was like, and he was like somebody that would live next door to me, and I just walked next door and we'd yuck it up. And we didn't have a chance to have a beer together, but he would have been the kind of a guy that I would have had one with, and we'd have just. And like I say, the last time I actually saw him, he came down to my inaugural. My daughters got to meet him, and I told them that what was going on, and they were concerned. Just people just ought to really remember him as a guy that he was everybody's neighbor and somebody that was always there to help.
Yeah, you mentioned, Governor, that you gave him some advice. Did he ask for it, or?
Sometimes John Kasich gives advice even when it isn't asked for, but I think he always appreciated it, and just he was new in the job, and so I tried to tell him what it's like to be new in the job, and he listened politely, and you know, I mean, he just was that kind of a guy, and it was always encouraging to me. Always nice. You know, even we got close to election, he's like, "Well, John, you know, good luck," and we just had a nice relationship. Very nice.
All right, that's a common theme, that he was a very serious man, but at the end of the day, he was a nice man, and wished you well.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and I'll tell you, he was street smart as well. He just knew how to dive in and look at things, and he questioned things, you know, on sort of a 360 degree, and he was a good listener. You know, I mean, during the water crisis, I came up to Toledo, and we sat in his office for, I guess it was about a good hour or so, and kind of walking through things. And, you know, if he'd say this, I'd say, well, what do you think about that? And sometimes he'd say, yeah, I think you're right. And sometimes he would say, no, I got to do it my way. And I'd say, I respect that. I mean, we just had he was really easy to work with, you know, really easy to work with.
What would you say to the people who have the job now moving forward in leading the city? What would you say to the people who are now charged with forging ahead?
Well, I you know, we're going to give all the help that we can so that we have a good transition. But I think, you know, and that goes without saying, but I think today's a day to remember and honor that great mayor.
Governor John Kasich, we thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts with us, and I'm sure you won't be the only one who raises a glass to him in memory next time you have that
right.
beer.
God bless you all, and God bless Toledo.
Thank you, Governor John Kasich, with us right now. Again, that statement from the city that we just got, we read it to you a little bit earlier, but here it is one more time. This is a deeply emotional day for the Collins family and all the Toledoans. We are saddened by the death of Mayor D. Michael Collins and had held out hope for his recovery.
Our condolences go out to his wife, Sandy Drabick, his daughters, his family, friends, grandchildren, and the community that loved him.
And we would like to thank the medical staff at the University of Toledo Medical Center for all the care and support they provided, as well, once again, as Evelyn Johnson and Andre Crisp for assisting the mayor in his time of need. We stand together as a city, as a community, and will continue to move forward.
And as a great city, in homage to Mayor Collins, you will do better in Toledo. In case you're just joining us, we received word shortly after 2:30 this afternoon that Mayor Mike Collins has died after suffering that cardiac arrest last Sunday afternoon, brought to the University of Toledo Medical Center shortly after, and has now lost his battle. He has died at the age of 70 years old.
13 ABC's Bill Horman followed politics and followed the mayor and looks back on his life and his legacy.
D. Michael Collins spent his life in service of his hometown. He walked a beat for 27 years as a Toledo police officer, then was elected by his brothers to serve 10 years as president of the Police Patrolmen's Association. While on the force, he earned his bachelor's degree from UT and then an MBA from UT. He handled several collegiate-level teaching assignments at the University of Toledo, but his call to public service was strong, and in 2007, he ran for city council as a political independent. He won that seat on Toledo City Council, representing South Toledo in District 2. Collins was known as a busy and dedicated councilman, often at odds with both Mayor Carty Finkbeiner and then Mayor Mike Bell. He even frequently debated issues with fellow council members concerning budgets and government oversight. But when he saw a chance to defeat Mike Bell, who was running for re-election in 2013, Collins decided to take him on, again as an independent, but with a massive amount of support from unions all across the city.
D. Michael Collins.
In November of 2013, he beat Mayor Mike Bell handily. Then in January, he began what turned out to be a very tumultuous first year as mayor.
As our community mourns the loss of these two fine professionals, they deserve, and rightfully so, the title of heroes.
Which began 3 weeks in with the deaths of 2 firefighters and then the worst winter weather in our city's history. But perhaps the biggest event during his short tenure as mayor was his handling of the water crisis that first weekend in August of 2014.
We're erring on the side of caution.
500,000 people were told they could not drink the water, and the mayor was the point man for his city. He met with federal and state local officials, organized water distribution lines, made sure samples of Toledo's water were tested for safety.
I'm pretty thirsty right now because it's been a long night.
It was a long 3 days for our city and for the mayor, but Mayor D. Michael Collins was in command, soliciting help from the governor and urging federal lawmakers to solve the issue of water quality in the Great Lakes. February 1st, he was out surveying the streets of his hometown as another big snowstorm crippled the city. D. Michael Collins was a dedicated policeman, educator, council member, and mayor, and he died at the age of 70.
Bill Horman with that. Thanks very much. And Melissa Veitch has been out at the University of Toledo Medical Center this week talking to various cardiologists about the difficulty of surviving cardiac arrest. And while everyone had hoped for the best, Melissa, this is certainly not a completely surprising or unexpected outcome, right?
You know, it truly isn't. Sadly, Diane, as we take a look back, you know, cardiac arrest is different than a heart attack. I think we've learned that over the last week. I know Dr. Chris Cooper, who is the lead cardiologist for the mayor's case, wanted to make the differentiation. You know, a cardiac arrest happens, it's an electrical problem in the heart, and it can strike without warning. And what happens to the heart is it sort of stutters a lot, and it stops pumping blood to the organs, most importantly to the brain. And, you know, for every minute that you are without oxygen, your chances of survival from cardiac arrest go down by 10%, and they only start out at 10%. So you can see how very quickly it can turn fatal. In a situation like this, though, we saw two bystanders who stepped in and attempted to do CPR, which at least got Mayor Collins to the emergency room here, along with Toledo firefighters. They have been absolutely hailed as heroes along the way from the cardiologist that treated the mayor and said, look, they did as much as they could. They got him here. And then, you know, in a case like this, they will do all they can medically, absolutely everything they can do medically. And then as they start to peel away the medical support, they can only take a look at what damage is left. And as we mentioned with brain damage in particular, that brain requires so much oxygen. And for every minute it is without oxygen, we see a greater chance of brain damage happen. Anyone who knew Mayor Collins knew that he was a very tough Irishman who would not want to live in a compromised situation for the rest of his life as a result of cardiac arrest. That was a possibility. You know, so they did take a look. Was there enough brain damage? There was no brain function, unfortunately, and that is what we see as a tragic end to this story. But as we take a look at miracles and what kind of things come out of them, we take a look at a Toledo community that certainly rallied around its leader. And there is a great sense of community that Mayor Collins often spoke of. And he led very strongly and would be very proud of the way that the community, I am sure, is pulling together after this. So that is, we take a look also at the medical workers who worked with Mayor Collins over the last week and worked very, very hard to try and save his life. And we even saw the lead cardiologist, Dr. Chris Cooper, who just teared up every time he tried to talk to the media, because I think he knew early on it was just a very difficult case. So our prayers go out to the Collins family who has sat vigil here. Our prayers go out to the cardiologists and the medical workers as well, who worked very hard to take care of the mayor during this time. That's about all we can say at this point. From UTMC, reporting live, Melissa Veitch. Back to you in the studio.
Melissa, who's been staked out at the hospital throughout this week since we learned that the mayor had that accident last Sunday afternoon.
And just in this week, she pointed out we learning the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest, and talking to many cardiologists who say, unfortunately, oftentimes the first symptom of cardiac arrest is sudden death. So he got a chance. The CPR, the EMTs that got him there, and the hospital staff at UTMC gave him a fighting chance, but the damage was done, and it was a little bit too much, obviously, clearly, to overcome.
Even with the incredible work of Evelyn Johnson and Andre Crisp. You mentioned earlier that we're both wearing red today, and it is Go Red for women, but it's Go Red for everyone, especially when we talk about heart disease.
Heart disease, it's the #1 killer of men and women. Many women think that breast cancer is the #1 killer, but it tends to be heart disease, and there tends to be sort of a disconnect. Women will hear that heart disease is the #1 killer of women, but they will think, well, it's not going to be my #1 threat. But as we've learned, we talked also to a woman earlier this week. Her name was Elsie, if I can, Jaron.
Elsie story.
Jaron, who had cardiac arrest, dropped in her backyard. Daughter happened to be there, performed CPR. Doctors did the hypothermia therapy,
Same thing, right?
that Mayor Collins needed. And 6 months out of her cardiac arrest, she is surviving.
She's doing great.
She still
one
can't
of those
drive.
Miracles, though,
yeah, but
right?
she is one of those miracles. And somebody got to her in that very small 4 to 6 minute window. Alexis Means is downtown, and she has been gauging the reaction of leaders and lawmakers throughout the area. Alexis, we send it to you right now.
Well, I just got a chance to talk to Marcy Kaptur, and we were talking about the mayor and how he was just at the 31st annual Aspiring Minority Youth Conference at the University of Toledo over the weekend. I believe that may have been his last public appearance, and he was inspiring the children in the audience and all the students from Toledo Public Schools to be great and to do better and know that they have a future. As we have been mentioning, he was very, very proud of Toledo. He fought for Toledo. He worked for the Toledo Police Department, and he also helped us get through that water crisis. When I talked to Marcy Kaptur, she said this is a time for us to celebrate Mayor Collins.
He loved serving this city. Were all moments whipped cream? No. There were many difficult moments. Can you imagine being a policeman and a detective for 20 years, all that he saw in his lifetime? But he was never cowed by it. He was never leveled by it. He ultimately became mayor after having served as councilman for many, many years. He tried to master the detail of this city and to serve us as mayor. And his first year in office was just full of difficult moments, and he shepherded us through. We have to be grateful.
And again, as she was mentioning, we have to be grateful for everything that he has done for the city of Toledo. And many people that I talked to are reminded that, hey, he was a Toledo police officer and he was the mayor of this city. Back to you.
All right, Alexis, thanks very much. And like many of you, I went to his Facebook page when this first happened and looked at all of the pictures, which I think show a different version of him. We love to look at everybody's Facebook pictures. We love to see what goes on in their life. And here's an example of some of the momentous events in his life. D. Michael Collins may have been many things professionally: Marine, police officer, city councilman, and mayor. But in smaller, perhaps more meaningful moments, he was a husband, a father, and a grandfather to 8. His Facebook page is filled with those moments, and if pictures tell the truth, these were happy times for him. Collins was the father of 3 grown daughters from his first marriage. 2 of them live in San Diego, which is where he and his wife Sandy spent this past Thanksgiving. He married Sandy Drabick in July 2005. She's a respected attorney with a long list of professional accomplishments, including vice president and general counsel for the University of Toledo before her retirement in 2007. They took many pictures of their travels to Ireland, to Disneyland, to Mobile, Alabama just last month to watch his team, the Toledo Rockets, win the GoDaddy Bowl game. He may have been the leader of Ohio's 4th largest city, but somebody had to mow his lawn, which his wife documented over and over and over again. And he was a dog guy. Here they are with their dog Chloe at the September opening of Toledo's new dog park. He was a loyal and enthusiastic supporter of his alma mater, sporting Rockets garb in picture after picture. Pictures that show a smiling politician visiting Toledo's farmers market, overseeing ribbon-cutting ceremonies, honoring his time as a Marine, and it would seem loving every minute of it. He was proud of his Irish roots, too, talked about it often, and returned to his homeland a number of times. And after his cardiac arrest, many supporters remembered that in prayer and in the Irish blessing, which ends with the line, "And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand." And a lot of response on social media about this as well. It seems to be the place where we all go when we need to express something.
Let's check in with our Sasha Bray, standing by with reaction on the social media side of things. Sasha.
Lee, Diane, within minutes of posting that update about the mayor's passing, we had hundreds of comments flooding in. In fact, being here in the newsroom in the early mornings, we would get phone calls almost every morning, sometimes from the same people calling us, checking in, saying, have you heard anything different? Have you heard anything different? Social media, no different. If we can take a look at our Facebook page there, we have been obviously updating our viewers as we get those official word from the city, but also getting just daily comments. We have more than 500 comments, more than 500 shares, people spreading the word about the mayor's death. A lot of the comments seem to resound on one point, and that is put politics aside. Politics don't matter today. And we've heard a few of our officials who have called in and shared the same sentiment. They say it doesn't matter what you believed before. What matters now is that we've lost a member of our family, our Toledo family. Many people sending their prayers, their good thoughts to the family, to Mayor Collins' friends as well. We've also had some messages from other cities, which has been really interesting. Viewers who live in Fostoria, Perrysburg, Maumee, taking a moment to post on our Facebook page saying, I don't even live in Toledo, but this has been so sad, and I have been following the developments, sending their prayers as well. We had another person, actually a number of people, paying tribute, and it's kind of interesting. You've been talking a lot about the different facets of Mayor Collins, his military service, his time in the police force, and then also his time as a public servant. And from each of those stops in his life, we've had people who came into contact with him, and even more interestingly enough, people who never met him but work in those fields, who are chiming in, sharing memories, talking about their personal experiences and how it links back to how they feel that connection with Mayor Collins in one way or another. A lot of military references also from fellow Marines and so forth. And even in the last few minutes, we noticed we're seeing a number of Facebook pages in tribute to Mayor Collins popping up. New hashtags, Glass City Mike, and inviting people to come to this page, post your memory. Do you have a memory with Mayor Collins? Did you meet him? Did you work with him? And it's really interesting to sort of get that feedback. And, you know, here in the newsroom, we are calling around, talking with different officials, arranging for them to meet with us and sort of share their condolences. And it's really something. Even for us, we do these kinds of stories as breaking news, and to hear the emotion in their voices, everyone's sort of taking a moment to soak in what has happened today, reflect on the loss, but always sharing heartfelt, really warm wishes for the mayor's family to know that they are not alone and that everyone is sort of reaching out in whatever way they can, be it social media, on the phone, or whatever it may be. But we will continue to track those developments. You can watch, join us, 13 ABC, look at our Facebook page, check out our Twitter account, share your memories, reflect on the loss that the city has experienced today. Lee, Diane?
Sasha and the family, Sandy Drabick and the daughters, taking every warm wish and prayer they can get at this time.
And expressing their gratitude for all the prayers. They must have probably felt it. It must have been a palpable feeling because there was a lot of prayers going out to him.
Yeah. We've talked with a long list of colleagues of Mayor Collins throughout the last couple of hours. One of whom is George Sarantu, worked for quite a few years on City Council, and one of the first hires, George, that Mayor Collins made when he became mayor was to hire you as the finance director. Your thoughts on this sad day?
Well, Lee and Diane, this is a very sad day for all of us and very somber. None of us ever thought about something like this terrible happening, and it's just very difficult for all of us because we enjoyed so much working with Mayor Collins, and he had so much vision, but he also was concerned about making sure that the trains are running on time. And I talked to him almost on a daily basis, and he always asked very pertinent, very detailed questions. Sometimes when we talked on the phone at night, it was the same operation style that he had, and because he cared about the city, he cared about everything that was happening, and we got to know each other as colleagues on City Council. As a matter of fact, I met him shortly after his election. I called him, and we met for the very first time. I really had never met him personally. I knew who he was. I knew of all the great leadership roles he had played in the city, but from that first time we met, I knew that he would be a very strong leader on City Council. And as he discussed with me his potential candidacy for mayor, I knew that he could be a very good candidate, and he was. And he started talking to me in the late summer of 2013, and he said, "I'm going to need your help." And of course, I was in my final year because of term limits on City Council, and I just said, I'm going to help you in any way I can. Just, let me know what you need. And we went from there. I didn't assume that I would be the finance director. I thought he just meant just to give him some advice in that. So that's how it all kind of started.
What about, George, we all know that Mayor Collins was given to, he could expound on a number of issues and was quite proud of that, right?
Oh yeah, and he did it. You know what? And he did. To his credit, he did his research.
No doubt.
The challenge you have as a member of City Council that I had for 12 years was time, and I probably put in as much time as anyone else, and sometimes I put a lot more time than the president of City Council, depending who was president. But the fact is, he put in even more time, and he did his research, and he would show me things, and he would get information from city employees, and I was just amazed at his information source, because you know what? 95% of the time, he was right. You could laugh it off and say, oh, that can't be true. Then you'd find out it was true. And this was Detective Collins, who did his homework and took the information, and got the message out. And he was right so many times.
And he didn't mind letting you know that he was right. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. There were times... we had some real challenges with the administrations that we worked with, and he and I would both be very concerned. But I had to kind of be the calm one, which can be unusual for me. I had to be the calm one in the room with him when we met with administrators, and I'd say, "Now, Mike, I'm the chairman of the committee. Let's get through this," and he did. But I mean, he really took his role very seriously, and I guess my point is he made the time. He was retired, and he did teach part-time at the university, and I believe out at Lourdes also. But here's a guy who could have said, you know what, I'm just going to show up for the meeting, have my cup of coffee, and out the door, and I'll be on the golf course, or I'm going to take a vacation. This guy, Mike Collins, worked so hard as a retiree, and because he cared, and he did his homework, and he just was unbelievable. I mean, it was at all hours. He was checking things out, and when he told you something, you knew that he took that issue seriously, and he wasn't just going to accept what an administrator said or what a citizen said or what an employee of a certain department said. He would check it out, and I always admired that and envied that. But I also recognized I didn't have the time to do that. I had a business to run. Mm-hmm. I had a family to take care of. But thank God he was there on council, because he really did his homework. And he was a great educator for council members. And yeah, at times I'm sure some of the members got tired of hearing this or that, But we had to accept it because he told the truth.
Let me ask you, George, about your tenure here as finance director. How often did you talk with the mayor? Was he looking over your shoulder, because he always did his homework?
He did his homework, yeah. And he told me when he wanted me to take this job. And by the way, I went to him before I agreed to take the job, and I gave him a couple other names. He almost threw me out of his office. He said, "You don't understand. I want you to be the finance director." I said, "Okay, just relax. We'll get it done." But no, he and I talked frequently, and he brought up important issues, with me regarding finances, and we would talk about that. And there were things I had to go to him, and I said, "Look, this 15 budget is going to be tighter than ever. And, we've got to do some bold things here. We've got to find savings of several $1 million if we're going to make this work, until we get more jobs into this community." And, he accepted that.
George, let me ask you, were you there? Were you involved in the level 3 snow emergency? Did you get a chance to see him on Sunday?
No, I was not. But I remember vividly last year's level 3s, right? Because I was there, and I was down. I was with him, during the water crisis. And I mean, he took charge, and he just wanted to get the problems solved for the citizens. And I am told by some of my closest colleagues that he looked great on Sunday, and he was doing fine. And that's why we were just stunned, to learn of this. Just nobody expected it, and he never complained about his health to me. He always had plenty of energy, and this is just a real shock to all of us.
Certainly is. George Sarantu, City Finance Director, former council member, sitting alongside Mike Collins all those years. We thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, we heard from Ignacio Messina talking about the mayor had just had a checkup, according to Blade reporter Ignacio Messina, and that he was given the all clear.
Okay.
Goes to show you how sudden and unexpected and unanticipated something like that can be.
Continuing to gauge reaction, we've heard from a number of people this afternoon. Congresswoman Kaptur, Governor Kasich, and now Congressman Bob Latta from the 5th District joins us on the phone. Congressman, thanks for joining us. Just let you have your say, your thoughts on Mayor Collins and his passing today.
Well, thanks very much. And Marcia and I extend our deepest sympathies to Mike's wife and children and grandchildren. And, the city of Toledo in Northwest Ohio has lost a real leader. And, you think back and just the year that he had as mayor and all the things and crises that occurred from, the tragedy with the two firefighters, the last year's blizzard, the water crisis, and again, what happened with the snowfall this past week, and then, all of his hard work to keep Jeep in the city of Toledo. And he never quit working. And I just think that, when you talk about and want to say what a true public servant is, that you could say that that's Mike. And he's one of those folks that my dad always said that, how to define a public servant as a person who sees how much they can give of themselves to the people they represent, and that's him.
You have introduced legislation about harmful algal blooms. Tell us about your working relationship with the mayor on that subject, near and dear to all Toledoans' hearts.
Well, we all know what happened back in August, and was in Toledo with the mayor at meetings that weekend. That he called, and I know that Senator Portman was in, the governor, Senator Brown's folks, and Senator and Representative Kaptur, and he brought everybody together from the county, the city, the state, the federal, and worked tirelessly. I don't think the guy slept, and he just worked, and even after a few days went by, and I know I was on calls with the folks with him from Toledo, with the people in Columbus. So he did. He just worked, and he epitomized what, if you want to be a good public servant, that's what you want to be, and follow his lead.
When's the last time, Congressman, that you were able to touch base with Mayor Collins? Do you recall?
Well, it was just not too long ago, because we were talking about the legislation and also about not only the algal blooms, but also on the whole issue of Jeep and what we can do in Washington. Because, he wanted to make sure that everyone was in the loop. And he just, like I said, so I'd say it was probably not more than less 2 weeks, I think it was now. So he had my cell phone number, I had his cell phone number, and so he could call me anytime, and that's the best way to have a relationship, to be able to work with people, that you can just pick up the phone and call them and get right to work.
The governor called him kind of a cool guy, and he really liked him, and he's going to miss him. Do you feel that way as well?
Well,
of course.
Again, when you look at his past, he served his country in the Marine Corps. He served as a police officer on council, and then as mayor. And he just wanted to do everything he possibly could to better the city of Toledo. And so, Northwest Ohio has lost a true leader with his passing.
Congressman Bob Latta, we thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule today to share your thoughts with all of our viewers.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. And Throughout the course of this afternoon, we've been talking about the tumultuous, the incredible challenges of that first year in office for the mayor. And the first one, of course, was about a year ago, the deaths of Stephen Mashinsky and Jamie Dickman, the loss of 2 firefighters. And it was Mayor Collins and the fire chief, Luis Santiago, who were front and center. And we have Luis Santiago on the phone with us right now. Chief, can you share with us your thoughts? This must be a very difficult day for you.
Well, it is difficult. We're sharing in the pain of, the entire city and the the city administration and, the entire team that was, put together to provide the services for the citizens of Toledo. So it's a shock. And, as you know, we've gone through our loss a little over a year ago, and, I'd put that this right up there with it. It's tough.
And we recall during the last alarm ceremony, just a beautiful and poignant ceremony. Tell us about how the mayor helped you and your firefighters through that.
Well, the mayor was there immediately, before the fire was even put out. I mean, he arrived at the hospital shortly after I did and, was arranging things with the State Highway Patrol to try to get family members in of one of our firefighters that was, they were out of town, and also making some provisions to preserve the scene itself from an investigative point of view. So he was really spreading his thoughts and talents throughout, and we were the benefactor of that.
I talked to Jamie Dickman's mother just on the anniversary of this, and she could not say enough about how Mayor Collins made sure that she had the opportunity to say goodbye to her son. She said that the mayor was the one who made sure that she had that moment.
Well, and that says a lot. And over the next few days, we're going to be hearing a lot about his service. Anywhere from being in the military to being a police officer to a council person and the mayor. I just hope over the next several days that the public's able to learn a little bit about him as a person. Well,
what can you share with us, Chief,
about
the moments that you
we go back a little bit of ways. I mean, he was a high school teacher of mine at St. Francis High School in criminal justice. So we've gone back quite a ways, and I've known him throughout. And then when I got in the fire department, he was the union president over there, and then retired for a little bit, and then came back into public life being a council person. So I've had quite an experience with him.
All right, can you give us some recollections of Mike Collins, the teacher? Because I think he's always been a teacher.
Well, he has, and you could tell even as a high school student where you're not always focused on what you're supposed to be doing there, but it was still evident to me as a youngster that he was proud of his profession and proud of the vocation of law enforcement and criminal justice, and it really shined in his instruction.
Also a law enforcement instructor at the University of Toledo, a lifetime of teaching. Yeah. Chief Santiago, we thank you so much for being with us, and our thoughts are with all of you as well, the folks who put their lives on the line every day to serve us, and he was one of those for sure.
Right. Thank you so much.
You talk about getting to know the mayor over the years as a councilman, union chief, and certainly as mayor. And our Bill Horman has known Mike Collins knew Mike Collins for a long, long time, and perhaps can give us perspective that some people can't, because Bill, you were with him through so many difficult or challenging times and had to ask some real tough questions.
Sure, tough questions, got honest answers, always an honest answer. He would frequently say to me during these interviews, you ask me the question, I'll give you the answer, I won't lie to you. Frequently he would call me with story ideas. If I ever called him for a response on some story, Lee, Diane, I can't remember, but maybe 2 or 3 times in the 6 or 8 years I covered him that he ever turned me down for an interview. Now, that has a couple of meanings. One, you could say, well, he just liked being in front of the camera. Well, maybe there was a little bit of that. But most importantly, the man was prepared. He knew all the issues in this city. He would take a position principled on his convictions, and if it ran counter to the rest of council and the administration, so be it. He was going to tell you what he thought. I always got a straight answer from Mike Collins. I never thought he was purposefully trying to mislead me in any way. As a reporter, that's what you expect. That's what we got. That's what I'll miss.
You know, we had heard from so many people about how he was just nonstop during the weekend of the water crisis and that he didn't get any sleep. You as well did not get any sleep. You were down there with him the entire time. Tell us your remembrances and thoughts from that very challenging weekend.
He took the lead, Diane. It's simply that. This man had to organize 3 levels of government, you know, the local level at the county as well as the city, the state level, all the way up to the governor's office, and then at the federal level. Both Bob Latta and Marcy Kaptur were there, as well as Rob Portman. Sherrod Brown was in contact. So he had to organize all this, and even Governor Kasich said during one of their press conferences that he was letting the mayor take the lead on this. Government which acts best is that which was closest, and Mike Collins was close to it. But this was also an issue, the water crisis we're discussing, that Mike Collins had been alerting the city about the algal bloom problems and the phosphorus problems in the lake. This was a topic that he was well versed on. And at times, I'm told, that when in that command center, he would take the lead in dispensing information and knowledge, when some felt that maybe he should pull back a little. But that's just an insight into the man, always well prepared, always willing to offer his input, but then always willing to accept input as well. And it was just a matter of maybe 72 hours where we got that issue resolved, if it was ever as serious as we thought. But he was there every step of the way. Just parenthetically, let me add, there was at one point, he had been in a lot of meetings, a lot of intense meetings, and he came back out, and this was one of the few times that Melissa and I didn't grab him for a live interview. And I said, so where are you going now? He said, you know, I'm just going to walk around and thank the people for helping out and pitching in and being cooperative and patient with us. So that's what he did. He went to the water distribution sites when maybe he should have gone home and rested his brain a little bit, but that wasn't Mike Collins.
Yeah, well said. And that, you know, Bill, you mentioned that when you wanted an answer, he would give it to you. And a lot of people thought Mayor Collins, Mike, was verbose. But I tell you, he could walk the walk, talk the talk, couldn't he?
Well, you know, I was talking about this with another one of our reporters earlier this week, Lee, and those things that at the time you might find irritating, challenging, are the things that you find most endearing when they're gone. And sometimes Mike Collins, and everybody knows this because we've shown video of it, if you ever attended a council meeting, you witnessed it yourself, could be pedantic, could be challenging, could be demanding, could be forceful, was always knowledgeable, and always had what he considered to be the best interests of the taxpayers of the citizen of Toledo. So you cannot fault a man for that. I'm not sure we have that sort of a presence on city council. That's not to say that they're not interested in the best regards of the taxpayer, but he went about it a different way. He was always knowledgeable. Lee, he would attend committee hearings for committees he didn't even sit on. He just wanted to be involved in all aspects of government. He wanted to know it all, and I can pretty much tell you, and I think George Sarantu said it earlier, 95% of the time he was right on an issue. He knew that budget backward and forward. And I bet George Sarantu he did have a couple of eyes looking over his shoulder just about every day on that budget.
Did you ever ask him a question where he got real irritated with you, and perhaps after the camera turned off, he expressed some irritation or displeasure? Because I didn't. You could ask him anything, and he was okay with it.
No, never once, Lee. He understood what our role is. He appreciated that. If I wasn't getting to a question that he wanted asked and wanted an answer given, he would tell me this after the interview. Ask me the question, and I'll give you the answer. If you're not getting to the question, I'll try to guide you there with my answers. So sometimes that was a very effective way of doing this. Let me just tell you this quick story. I have occasionally had the privilege of filling in on Conklin and Company, and I like to have the mayor on. When he was a sitting city council member, I asked Mike Collins to be on the program. I also wanted George Sarantu to be on the program as well. And George called me and he said, will you just make sure, Bill, that when Mike and I are on the set with you, that I get to speak as well? And I said, George, no problem. I'll make sure we know. I'm not sure he got his fair amount of time, but I understood the message, and I'm sure Mike Collins would have a good chuckle over that today.
Bill, you have covered this city for many, many years and done such a great job of it. Where would you rate Mike Collins in terms of...
I'm sorry, Diane, you're breaking up.
I'm sorry. I said you've covered the city for so many years, covered politics for so well for all of Toledo. And where would you rate Mike Collins in terms of most memorable characters that you've had the chance to encounter?
Oh, heavens.
Yeah.
That's a really good question, and I'm not gonna give you a good answer, but I'll attempt something. I really enjoyed just about everybody I have ever covered in this office. I worked probably most closely with Mike Collins because he would come to me with story ideas and I would go to him for his perspective on stories that I was developing. I would have to say that given his personality, given his preparedness, given his intensity, maybe it's Mike Collins. I also enjoyed Mike Bell. Carty Finkbeiner, of course, was a memorable person. But let me just add this as well. Mike Collins was a political independent. My nature, as far as politics goes, is to never to believe somebody who claims to be an independent. They lean one way or the other, but perhaps for political consumption, they claim to be independent. Mike Collins once said to me, I have never belonged to a political party. And honestly, with regard to some issues, he was more left and other issues was more right. I believe him. I think his whole life he was politically independent, and that was something you could count on. The man was not beholden to any political party.
Bill Horman, we thank you so much for your input, and I know you'll be standing by, and we'll come back to you momentarily.
Perspective, I think, like just about any other.
Sure.
Unlike any other in the city.
Mike Collins, a Republicrat or a Democrat, maybe you'd want to call him.
Really tough, and at times, we'd have our Take Three panel, the journalists on Conklin and Company, and it was really difficult to say, well, Mike Collins is an independent. He says he's independent. But then you'd say, well, maybe he's leaning a little bit this way or that way. But, you know, by and large, really tough to peg.
And you mentioned Conklin and Company, and he was your first guest of the new year, right?
Yeah, we just felt that facing things in 2015 after the year that was 2014, that there was no better guest to have. And let's take a look at that. He led the city through an incredibly tumultuous first year in office. The deaths of 2 Toledo firefighters, the worst winter in Toledo history, and the water crisis. But as our first guest of 2015 on Conklin and Company, Mike Collins was upbeat, looking ahead and giving credit.
I think I've had the finest team in the world that could ever have been created when you look at each of the challenges individually and collectively.
Coming off the holidays on that January 2nd, Mayor Collins and I talked about economic development, including something that had been on his radar for years.
I do see something for the future of Southwick. It could be a medical cluster. We are having discussions along those lines.
The mayor emphasizing the city's determination to keep Wrangler.
We're going up to sell this city because we have the workforce, we have the leadership.
Even letting us in on a phone conversation he had with Sergio Marchionne, the Fiat Chrysler CEO.
I said, I'll come to Italy and I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be on a plane tonight if that's what's necessary.
And with the heat on over other serious issues, the mayor didn't dodge questions, including the contentious negotiations with the police union he once led.
We have to demonstrate that we have physical control of our city, and we can't continue using that capital improvements fund for a budget stabilization fund.
But at the end of the interview, just over a month ago, the mayor wanted to make sure he delivered a message.
I would like to say to the city of the citizens, and you know, thank you for the privilege of allowing me to have this responsibility, and I won't let you down.
And poignant final words in that particular show is as those who are left with the job of moving on, the challenges facing the city of Toledo, looking at this ProMedica deal that was done, or just about done, I should say, and of course Wrangler, which is so important, was so important to Mike Collins moving forward.
And we, of course, getting the word today that he was not able to survive that cardiac arrest that he suffered on Sunday, getting the word about 2:30 this afternoon that Mayor Collins had passed away. The city is saying that the funeral services, visitation, all of that are pending right now, working in concert, of course, with the family, whose privacy everyone is respecting. But what we also want to not forget in all of this was on that Sunday, a Toledo police officer died shoveling snow. Mike Greenwood passed away, and his calling hours are today, actually going on right now from 2 to 8 p.m. at Newcomer Funeral Home on Lasky, and want to also offer up all of our good thoughts and best wishes and hopes and prayers for his family, wife Carla of 28 years, and their children, and gratitude for his service to our city as well.
Heroic service
heroic
in the line of duty.
A Toledo police officer. So I think in a different news cycle, perhaps we would have been able to remember that more, but we certainly don't want to forget him. And so again, Mike Greenwood, funeral visitation today until 8 o'clock at Newcomer Funeral Home. The funeral service is tomorrow at 10.
The weather impacting so many things. And it was that news conference where Mayor Collins was leading the charge from the 911 call center before suffering that cardiac arrest, and Officer Greenwood out shoveling the snow.
Amy Montgomery is standing by downtown. Amy's been with us all day, sharing reaction from citizens and lawmakers as well. Amy.
Well, Diane, I think a lot of people, their hearts are broken right now. A lot of people here in Toledo. We've had an opportunity to speak with many people, not only here downtown, but kind of on our way down this way. And everyone kind of shares the same sentiment. They're feeling sorry for his family, and they're offering their condolences. But they're also feeling that pain as well. Mayor Mike Collins was the leader of this city, and a lot of people look to him for those decisions moving forward to keep the city running. And many of them kind of feeling that hurt today, feeling this loss really throughout the community. One thing that I did find interesting in talking with people, everyone says this is a tragedy, which it most definitely is, but they say that this was something that brought the community together. It's another way that Collins brought this community together. And right now we're standing outside of the safety building downtown Toledo, where Mayor Collins spent a lot of time. Anybody that's ever talked to him, I'm sure he mentioned to you that he was a longtime Toledo police officer. This was something that was very close to his heart, and that's something that people here in this community definitely felt. They felt like he was a heartfelt man. He was somebody that they could look to and rely on, and I know we've mentioned this a lot, but he's definitely somebody who did fight for this city. So I can tell you it's very somber. A lot of people just down here in the downtown area, as they're making their way home for the weekend, you can almost see it in their faces. If you talk to them, they'll tell you the same thing. Definitely feeling this loss today.
Amy, you've worked a number of shifts at this station, and one of your challenges on a weekend is to get somebody to comment, get somebody to tell you something on the record, and stand in front of the camera. And for that reason, I know Mayor Collins, back when he was Councilman Collins, was one of your favorite city leaders, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This was probably about 5 years ago that this was going on, and he had mentioned to me, anytime you need my help, anytime that you need me to comment on camera, I will be there. And I can speak this, that anytime I did call him, he was always available. And it wasn't always down here, Government Center or downtown. He would let me come over on a weekend and interview him in his backyard. He was very proud of his backyard because it was right up against the golf course. So he's one of those people that I will always remember as helping me out when I was new, kind of trying to get my bearings as a new reporter here in this city. So, that's something that I will always remember, and something that I will always hold close to my heart, especially given the recent events today. So we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Amy, thanks very much. I know she had to take her earpiece out and we couldn't talk to her more, but she was there on the night that he was elected, and she was telling me the story, and there's a picture of them right there, that she was thinking, well, she's got all night. Sometimes you never know when you're covering something on an election night, and he came looking for her to say, Amy, I was elected, and she gets the word to run back, get the mayor-elect on camera, and there is that moment that she has.
And it's a great picture.
It is a great picture.
The unmistakable green sweater that Collins Cares had on that election night. And we must point out an election that the so-called pundits, the local Toledo pundits, really didn't give Mike Collins the greatest chance to win.
We've covered elections over the years, and this was one of the most unorthodox elections as far as very little TV time, very little campaign ads, and a whole lot of door-to-door and foot traffic going and meeting and greeting and shaking hands and pressing the flesh.
It was grassroots, Mike Collins, if there ever was. But you saw those unmistakable signs; they were everywhere. Really hard to miss if you were out and about in the city of Toledo leading up to November that year.
13 ABC's Alexis Means joins us once again downtown with more from that perspective. Alexis?
Well, we are downtown here at One Government Center, and a lot of the city leaders here are absolutely saddened by today's events, basically. I've had a chance to talk to Larry Sykes today, and he said that the one thing that this is really done for. The city has really brought everybody together. And so he talked about that. And then Marcy Kaptur talked about how the mayor worked for the police department and that it was a very tough year for him as well. I actually talked to another gentleman, David Young, who works over at the University of Toledo, and we talked today about how the mayor had his last public appearance over at the University of Toledo over the weekend at the 31st Annual Aspiring Minority Youth Conference, and he took the stage there and he really encouraged the students in the audience to do the best that they could do in school as well, to continue to grow in life as well. And that was the last time that I actually saw the mayor, because I was on stage with him. And when I first saw him, I gave him a big hug, and he was wearing that big cream sweater and he had a smile on his face, and we talked a little bit about some of the news stories that I always ask him about, and we talked about, you know, the policeman's contract coming up, as well as some other news stories. And I just told him basically, hey, you know, everything will work out for you. At the end of the day, everything will work out. And then he just walked away with his smile like he always does. But city leaders here today are very saddened by what has happened. And of course, everyone's keeping Sandy and the rest of the family in their prayers. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Sis, thanks very much. And earlier we were joined by Governor John Kasich, who I really enjoyed hearing what he was saying. He said he was a really cool guy, and he never had a chance to sit down and have a beer with him, but he's sure that they would be able to yuck it up together once he did. And the governor sent out this notice: in honor of the life and service of Mayor Collins, I hereby proclaim by the authority vested in me as governor of the state of Ohio by the Ohio Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, that the flags of the United States of America and the state of Ohio shall be flown at half-staff upon all public buildings and grounds throughout the city of Toledo from sunrise to sunset, effective immediately and until his funeral.
That from Governor John Kasich on this 6th day of February, where Mayor Mike Collins has passed away at the age of 70 years old. We've heard from so many colleagues and representatives, public servants. We have Senator Sherrod Brown, who's joined us on the phone right now. And Senator, thanks for joining us. I think about the challenges the mayor faced very early on in his tenure. The deaths of the firefighters. You were there at that last call service. You delivered an address, as did the mayor. Can you just tell us about perhaps, first of all, your thoughts on the passing of Mayor Collins, and then back to that night when you were all together as one?
Yeah, I remember that very well, because of the last call service, memorial service like that is memorable always because of the firefighters that join from all over the state, and well, I'm sure from Michigan and Indiana. I just know that there were hundreds and hundreds of firefighters there. And because it was the mayor's first week or two in office, I remember particularly acutely the pain in his face, because with police and fire differences, and they always kind of talk about one another in that way, there is some camaraderie between the two, between the uniformed service, police and fire in a city, rivalry but camaraderie, and he really felt their pain, because I'm sure in his mind he was thinking about police officers he had known that were killed in the line of duty. But that happened in his first couple of weeks, and then the snow emergency came soon after that, and then in August came the terrible crisis, or tragedy is a better word, with water, with drinking water in those 500,000 families in Toledo. And he had an amazing first year, and unfortunately about his only year, since it didn't, he's only been mayor a little more than 13 months, I guess. So he really dealt with all of that, I thought, with class and with enthusiasm, and he really was able to kind of bring me, as one of two senators in Ohio, to Toledo repeatedly to help him try to get things done. And I know he did it with my colleague in the Senate, and he did it with Marcy Kaptur. I mean, he really did know what needed to be done. I invited him to come and testify to the Agriculture Committee in the Senate just a couple of months ago, back probably October, I think it was in November, December, to share with us what he had done and what we needed to do to make sure that doesn't happen. So while he has passed away, unfortunately, what he spurred on will have lasting impact. And as I look right now, I'm in Cleveland, I look out at this frozen lake today out the window, and I know the impact he will have on this great body of water and making drinking water and recreation and all that available to people across northern Ohio.
And we know you're no stranger to Toledo, even though you're from Cleveland, has visited here many, many times. What can you tell the folks of Toledo right now in kind of our time of uncertainty and our time of sadness?
Well, Toledo's a pretty resilient place. We know, what's happened. Just look at what's happened in the auto industry, down and now back up again. And that's not the first time that's happened. And Toledo kind of is resilient and recovers from everything, and will certainly recover. But I think the thing to remember with Mayor Collins is in just not much more than a year, he will have a good deal of lasting impact, because I would think that not only will that not happen again, what happened to the water system, which was not certainly of his making, but he helped to fix it, is the lessons he taught us on the state level, state and federal level, to make sure this doesn't happen around any of the Great Lakes. And the Great Lakes are the greatest body of fresh water in the world. Just happens to be Toledo sits on the shallowest part of that of any of the Great Lakes. And we learned from Toledo. I talked to my Democratic colleagues right after that happened about the impact of runoff and the impact of climate change and the impact about underinvestment and water and sewer systems and purification of water. And that's, again, not any individual's fault, but we all learned from it, and he helped teach us that.
Were you able to get to know him on a personal level, Senator?
Well, I had lunch with him soon after he was sworn in, with him and Lisa Ward, his assistant, and at a diner in Toledo, and had a great time just talking about his past and his police work and his union work. He's when you think of Toledo and you think of its history, you think of auto and glass, and you especially think of a city with great diversity that where the union movement, the trade union movement, brought prosperity. Toledo's a strong city with a strong middle class because of the labor movement in many ways, and he was an embodiment of that. He not only wanted to do public service as a police officer, he also wanted to serve his fellow men and women in the union, and that's what community's all about. And there's no better place to show that than the history of Toledo, Ohio.
All right, Senator Sherrod Brown, thanks so much, Senator, for taking time out this afternoon. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for honoring our friend and community leader, Mayor Collins. Thank you, folks.
We appreciate it, Senator. Thank you. 13 ABC I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty is never one to back down from asking a tough question, and he asked a few of a guy who's able to field those questions. Sean?
Yeah, and I want to tell you real quickly about one of the more memorable encounters I had with Mike Collins. We were at Auburn Hills at the Chrysler facility there. We were talking to him about his pitch of Sergio Marchionne, and his answer over and over again was talking about the weather and a bright sunny day. And you heard Bill Horman talk earlier about how Mike Collins always had his answers prepared and would never back down from a question. I really think in that interview, I think he was nervous. I think he was very nervous in meeting Sergio Marchionne and talking about what happens to the Wrangler next. He did certainly talk to us. He didn't give us the answers that a lot of us expected, but it was one of the few times I really felt like there was a nervous Mike Collins, not sure what was going to happen in this meeting. Mike Collins has always, as the city council, always had this habit of asking questions that he already knew the answer to, and he did it over and over again. Ask any member of the Bell administration, they'll tell you that. And this was a time that I really felt like Collins didn't know what was going to happen, didn't know how the meeting was going to go, didn't know what was going to come of it. He knew what his pitch was going to be. He knew what the city's pitch was going to be to keep the Wrangler. But I really felt an uneasiness from him that day. Certainly, he did answer our questions. He stopped at there was a red light there. They put the window down for us to talk to him. And again, it was very, very surprising that was the answer was. And that was one of the few times I felt like he wasn't sure which way the game was going to end at that point, and still we don't have an answer on the Wrangler. And maybe the work that he did with the Wrangler will continue forward and a positive result for Toledo for that. But somebody who didn't back down from questions, and that's something I'll never forget, that encounter with Mayor Mike Collins.
Sean Haggerty, thanks for that, hearing so many memories today and so many wishes for good luck and knowing that our hearts are with the family of Mayor Mike Collins. We're going to take a moment to reset and begin 5 o'clock.
But here's a lasting memory.
Here's to you, Toledo. You did a great job.